coming this way. Pieces of it are shutting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. To the left? Yeah, definitely. Two lights. One light to the front and one light to the left. Keep the flashlights off. Here's something very, very strange. Keep the headset on. See if it gets any stronger. Okay. Give us your rundown. Notation that this is on a beta reading, too. It's on a beta reading? Beta okay. Still has been removed. Okay. This is we're falling off it again. But it just moved to the right. Yeah. Off to the right. Strange. Oh, wait, what are you doing left? Let's approach to the edge of the woods up there. Do you want to do it without lights? Let's do it carefully. Come on. Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. It's still moving from side to side. And when you put the stethoscope on it, it sort of has a hollow center, a dark center. It's like the pupil of an eye looking at it.
Hospital Porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. And welcome back to Rendlesham Forest. I'm here again.
And I am back for a very, very unusual and special event. A very unique event. This is a Hapanwo TV coverage of the Colonel Halt Woodbridge briefing, which is going to take place on Saturday the 11th of July at the Woodbridge Community Hall. Now, if you listen to Hapanwo Radio, you'll know that because I've been advertising it for some weeks now. This is a unique event, possibly one which will never happen again, because this is basically an evening conference in which the keynote speaker, the star of the show, is none other than Lieutenant Colonel Charles I. Halt, US Air Force retired. And he is going to tell us about his experiences on the nights of Christmas 1980 when an extraterrestrial, or something unusual in other words, came down in the Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England, and he was one of the principal witnesses. So this is certainly a very, very important historical event we're talking about here. This is an event also not without its controversies, and I'll be saying more about that in the course of this film. But if you want some background, you could listen to my recent Hapanwo Radio interviews with Peter Robbins and Larry Warren. There'll be links in the description box to those. Also, along with Colonel Halt's lecture on the evening of July the 11th, he's also going to give us a tour, a guided tour, during the daytime of the forest, and he's going to describe his experiences, or what happened on the night when he was actually in the forest experiencing this strange thing. And he made a very famous tape recording, which you heard in the theme of this film. There's a longer version of that which you can get online. It's really, really an incredible piece of evidence. And he's going to point out everything he saw and everything he was feeling and thinking at the time, and what happened afterwards. And in the evening, he's going to discuss his, basically everything that happened as a result. So this is one not to be missed. So I think you're going to enjoy this film if you couldn't get there to the event. So the event begins with a tour, a guided tour of Rendlesham Forest by Colonel Charles Halt. Now, Colonel Charles Halt penned the Halt memo, which was all about what he experienced, which was exposed to the public, and it ends up in the newspapers, as you see here. This famous headline from 1983. And, wow, what was it all about? Well, we're going to speak to one of the men who actually was involved, and we're going to hear what he has to say from his point of view, what it was like on that night 35 years ago.
In fact, there's some pictures in, I think, Georgina Bruni's book or one of them, and you can see that taken about 1983 or 84. You could look all the way out here, but they planted the first of the pines now. So it's kind of grown up a bit. Yeah. But that's where Dylan Burroughs and them and the whole gang the first night saw the object from right up there. Now, the gate that's up there now is not the original gate, and the guard shack that's up there is not the original guard shack. The original guard shack was a wooden structure about this big with a telephone, and that was it, just a shelter for the gate guard to get out of the weather. They spent a little money a few years later and built a little fancier entryway. So, and we came out here, and they came out the first night out here, and turned right up the road. Cow path, and you have a high-center truck or four-wheel drive vehicle to go down there then. They've improved the road. There were no gates here.
So did you come from Woodbridge or was you at Bentwaters?
I started from Bentwaters and we came over to Woodbridge through the basin, came out and came around down here. So I could take my car down here now, but in 1980, no way. What road is
Okay, we're going through the gate now.
This was the old track 12.
There's a group of, quite a big crowd of people here, about 20 people. And just following the Colonel's just showing us what happened, and it's all changed since he was here last.
Like I say, from the gate all the way into up there somewhere. And the trees now are planted neatly in rows. They were irregular then, just every which way. But they were all still Corsica pines about so big. Yeah.
It's beautiful down
The way
there.
the trees are irregular in here, that's the way the trees were in the forest up there. Just scattered about.
Did you want?
Colonel Holt, Mr. Bryant.
Right.
And myself.
Sorry.
We can just do it. Yeah,
You do whatever you want.
bring you guys around. Bring you around this way. Okay. Bring you out onto the road here. So you can
Onto the road,
back that way.
There's John and Dave and Colonel Holt.
That's fine like that. We just do a couple like that. That's super guys. That's great.
He's a guy from the media.
Couple.
Well, you always have to, don't you?
There we go. Let's get straight to the camera for me, guys. There we go.
And down here when Simon's done.
Glad you're not buying film?
Yeah.
I used to bracket things, you know, a couple times, but now you can shoot 20 or 30. Just buy a new card if you need.
The local media have actually been very, very supportive. The BBC have actually covered this extensively. BBC Radio Suffolk actually did a special programme about the upcoming conference and about Colonel Holt's presence here at Rendlesham Forest. So there's probably going to be a lot of people later today at the event. It's a beautiful location. I came here last night with Derek and it was like in the evening.
I don't charge anything. Do you charge money?
About photographs.
Was a bit north.
There's Brenda with Colonel Holt.
You want your name? So what do you say? John Smith.
Oh, yeah, well,
I said Sturmbannführer.
Let's come over here a minute. The chap who was here earlier, he's gone. Now he's apparently no one seems to know who that guy is, but someone said he was from the East Anglian Daily News. He's just gone. But Colonel Holt, I thought he might be someone Colonel Holt hired. He's not. John doesn't know who he is. Brenda doesn't know who he is. So he may be some kind of paparazzi. I don't know, because I mean, without going into too much details, there have been I think there are some people who are intent on disrupting this event, and I'm not talking about those what I was talking about earlier. I don't mean those people. I mean somebody else, perhaps someone official. And so that's something we're going to keep an eye on. Oh, it's okay, it's alright. Just have a look through the forest. This is what Colonel Holt just said. This is what they would have seen. He's sort of doing his own thing, working to his own pace.
So, is IT man running the system for
Do you find that makes the video less wobbly?
Yeah, using the tripod, so as a hand, because it has a hold on it,
Yeah.
so you can use it kind of. Yeah, it's almost like a steady cam.
Okay.
So I find it very useful in that respect.
I could probably get some good tips off you for video because I don't. I'm the most amateur shittest videographer there is.
Yeah, I've got. It's. I don't have like an expensive Steadicam thing. There's some cheap ones I'm going to buy, but this is where we're heading down now. Obviously, very different now in the middle of the day in summer than it was in the middle of the night in winter. But, the location has changed slightly, but the paths are still there. The same paths are still there.
This path was here in 1980 then.
This wasn't. Oh, was it not? Oh, right. So we got to.
This is deeply rotted. This is improved. That's because of all the traffic that
Hmm.
Forest Service has come in and made this a navigable road.
So this was just like a track where you can
It
walk
was a
down.
jeep trail then with ruts deep like that.
Right.
See, that's what people misunderstand. They think all these tracks were here and all the forest was there in 1980. It's nothing like that.
Oh, so it's just different. Even the path has changed.
Yeah.
It was the route was here, but it was
Yeah, but
not.
half the path to the left.
Yeah.
To the right, we're even there.
Right. So this was just a jeep track. In the middle of the night in winter, it'd have been very much harder to find your way
35
around.
degrees that night.
Oh, that's a.
And the wind was blowing.
Sounds grim.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it would have been exciting. I mean, I came up here on the 30th anniversary with
Yeah.
John and Jim,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, there's another one down the bottom which goes along.
But the bottom one was no. We came in and parked in here.
Yeah. Because there's a wooden fence there and a bridal building just there. There's a wooden fence. There. And when the guys came and stopped the fence there,
I don't remember them knocking. They did that. I did.
I know.
Yeah, we went
But
up
there
here.
was a wooden fence along there.
Okay, when we came out with the jeeps and the trucks and the cops had already been out here, and even Pennison the first night and all went up this road, up this trail, and it was not this improved either. It was pretty crude. In fact, this is since the last time I heard they've improved it more, I think.
I'll just show you where we've come on the map. This is a bit annoying because I used to have two maps. This is the one we're going to deal with now. I used to have a map because you see it's right on the edge of the map. I used to have the one that was above it, so I could get the whole Rendlesham Forest in. But really, the interesting bit is on this map, luckily, and I've marked a few things here. Now, some of these marks I've made are not exact, like that cross there was originally meant to be the first night's landing where Penistone and Burroughs had their experience, but that's by no means certain. But I'll show you where we are anyway. That's the parking place on the corner. Okay, and that there's Eastgate, where my fingernail is, so this map scale is not too good. Well, basically what happens is Colonel Halt will take us down this road here till we get to this pathway. That footpath going along there, and it takes us along there, down here, and eventually he leads us to the area just west of Capel Green, which is where he had his experience. So you'll be able to follow us. Probably Google Maps is probably better for this than Ordnance Survey, but I love the old-fashioned paper maps, can't resist them.
like this now.
There are several patches where all the trees have come down. There's
Either right here or right up there where we stopped. The landmarks are on the other side, so I can't tell for sure. But if I see the farmer's house, I know where it was
So
approximately.
why don't we go around the other way?
Well, I can say somewhere along here, I can't tell you because all the landmarks are gone now, either right here or within about 100 yards. When I came out, all the light alls had some motor generators with the big lights on them, and all the cops were all gathered here, and they were pointing into the woods telling me, well, it landed over there. Actually, it could be anywhere from here, but I'll be more precise from the other side because I can't tell now. And we stood here and we had about, I'd guess 15, 16 cops here. A couple 6-pack trucks, which are 6-passenger pickup trucks, 4-wheel drive, and I think another pickup truck when we got here. And they were milling around, and then I got very concerned, so many people out here in the forest at night, and told them all, stay here, be quiet, don't move. I don't want anything, I don't want us all caught out here. And 5 of us were in the Jeep together, Bruce England, Lieutenant England, Master Sergeant Bobby Ball, Tech Sergeant Monroe Nevels, Adrian Bastenza, who was a Buck Sergeant or Staff Sergeant, and myself. We went forward into the forest about 150 or 200 yards into there. And we need to go around the other side, and I could show you more specifically because there's a big oak tree in the farmhouse, and I can get my bearings there, but there's nothing to go by here. But it was somewhere in this area, either here or right up there, that we were all stopped. And that's where Peniston parked the first night when he and Burroughs and Cabanas came out and went in and confronted whatever it was. And they came back to here, and actually they were driving a 6-passenger pickup truck, and then he went back with a pickup truck. And Peniston would have been carrying, he had his notebook and he had a camera. The flatline supervisor at both bases, which he was one at Woodbridge, carried a camera because we had a lot of problems with we call them bird watchers, people that have an interest in aircraft that climb over the fence to get close, not to do damage or anything, but to whatever, I don't know the reasons. So we would take their picture when they did that and turn them over to the British police to tell them don't come back again. So we'll walk up and around and go to the other side, and I tell you more precisely what happened.
Yeah.
Planes flies.
Planes flies.
Soon find out. It's that glowing object with red and blue lights on it.
Got a nice crowd of people today. Looks really, it's very atmospheric in this part of the woods. I panel to you viewers, that's something I can't capture on film, is how very, how the kind of energy of the place. I can well believe there were portals and things in this part of the world.
I was here in 1981. Yeah. That I know because the normal audience like me. I've been involved in investigating UFOs since successful. Yeah, I didn't know that. I just keep the low profile. I'm retired now, so it's tough. I've been a professional astronomer, you know.
Yeah.
Look at that, that's another, these little alleyways.
I know what you're saying.
This is like timber, and there's these like straight lines of trees. But in 1980 it was different. They didn't have these straight rows of trees. We've come across a few cyclists because Rendlesham Forest today is like a cycling capital of Britain. And everyone in the car park was turning up with their bikes, riding bikes. There's an annual bike race here. I don't think I've ever been here when there's not lots of cyclists around. That's a nice shot in there. There's an amazing dark. That's Ublis's paradox in action. That is. You see, there's so many trunks put together that you can't see through them to the other side.
Are you an astronomer?
I'm not actually, but I'm interested.
Paradox in the
Yeah, I'm interested in that sort of thing though. I mean, I am keen on science and science of the cosmos and things like that. Oh dear. I'm a kind of amateur Professor Brian Cox, but with more hair on my body and a deeper voice, more masculine.
Never meet an astronomer who's got anything good to say about him.
No, I've never met anyone who's had anything good to say about him. That's my friend Heidi. Hello. We're approaching Capel Green now. Look at this. There's another of these classified things. Yeah.
This is new.
Yeah, this has all just come up now. There's Capel Green.
We didn't come down here, but what I want to tell you is, in 1980 we were up there a little ways, but there was a barbed wire fence here, and there's a big berm here. And this nonsense about Gordon Williams coming out with a staff car, number one, he couldn't gotten down the road because it was a big American staff car with about that much ground clearance. If he'd gotten part way down, it had to have been towed back. And the comments made, he went out into the field. Now, he had to drive through a barbed wire fence and go over a berm that you'd have to have a tractor vehicle to get over, or a big farm tractor.
You mean like
There's a big berm right there.
ditch?
So it's nonsense that he drove out into the field. He didn't even come out, we know that. So, but
There's Capel Green over there.
Yeah,
so let's go back up here and we'll find the site. I just wanted to show you there's a berm here because you may not be able to see it up there. And the farmers put up the fence because he's tired of people coming out into his field, I'm sure.
He says it's to keep the deer out.
Down there.
No, there are deer fences in Oxford and Oxfordshire, and they're much shorter than that.
Don't need that for a deer, do you?
Look at the chemtrails, horrible chemtrails today.
Do you know what?
This is amazing, this. These are quite recent, these things. They've only just been put up. But they are like, see, there's the old headline there. Based on your dad's memo.
Yeah.
And there is some nice one. Are we truly alone in the universe? Oh, amazing, this. Yeah, it's a bit of a pothole down there.
Oh, see, I did you?
We're on, this is the official UFO trail.
Yeah.
Trails were as improved as they are now, trust me.
No. It's all grown up now.
You can see that this whole thing is now catering for the tourists. This is the spooky area we came to last night. There's Capel Green over there. And that of course is where Larry Warren had his sighting. But we're not meant to talk about that.
There's the oak tree. Farmer's house is out there.
All right, oak tree over there.
See the oak tree out there? That's the only landmark I have that in the farmer's house. So somewhere back in here, and I'd put up surveyor's tape on where I thought the spot was. I could get within maybe 50 or 100 feet. But the surveyor tape's gone. But it was back in there about 100 yards. And it was entirely different. It was more like I showed you earlier, the hot, tall pines. And we came up to the fence up here, none of this was here. The barbed wire fence there, and we looked out into the field, and that's where we saw the object in the field. And the farmer's house is just across the way. I don't know if you got to look at it or not. There's a hedgerow now. You can't see the bottom row windows, but then there were no hedgerows. You could see all the windows, and the farmhouse was dark as could be. And I was concerned, and I thought, we're going to, two things. Their safety, number one, with what was going on, and number two is that they would find us and call the police or the authorities. But the lights never came on in the farmhouse, despite what it says in least at the guest East Gate or whatever. And there were no cattle in the field either, which is stated. The cattle were in the barn. We did see evidence that the cattle had been in the field because somebody stepped in one of the piles when we were out looking for any residue that came off the object. Then we went across the field, past the farmer's house, stepped in a little stream or something down there and got all our feet wet. And went across the road a little bit, and that's when we saw the objects in the sky. At that time we could still see this field clearly. There was nothing else in this field. We were out there for probably an hour and a half, and I kept calling the command post and trying to say, hey, you know, have radar look here, do this, do that, find to see if you can find anything, and I kept getting there's nothing, which is not true. Then we finally got disgusted because nobody seemed interested, and it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. We were wet, cold, tired. I said, well, if nobody else cares, let's go home. We packed up and went home.
Interesting.
And if we go up here, you may be able to get a view of the farmhouse and all. I think. Can you see it from the end of the track up there?
Not really. It's all grown up like this.
It's all grown up like this. Well, if anybody wants to, you can wander out there and look. But there's a farmhouse directly over there, and the abbey's on beyond. There's the big oak tree. That's the only really good reference. The oak tree and the forest for that I'd have troubles. The farmhouse over there.
Yeah, this is the only place in the whole forest where you can see Orford Lighthouse.
Oh, you can see it. I have a slide I took a couple years ago that clearly shows the tip of the ice. It's over there, and the farmer's house is there, and the light and the object was out there, and we could see it. Now, a little thing. I met the keeper and his wife. Keith Simmons and Marcelo, whatever. But anyhow, he and his wife, and I took them to the pub. We had a drink and talked for a while. And he explained how the lighthouse worked. The lighthouse has one big bright light, yes. It has a shutter. It's shuttered on this side. The only thing you can see on this side is a white light as it revolves. The red and the green light, we saw red, remember, shine out to sea. They're navigational lights. Now, I'm not sure what the significance of red and green means something to a navigator.
Port and starboard.
Yeah, port and starboard, but, you know. But we could see the white light occasionally flicker because there's a little gap in the trees over there. I'll show you that in the slide tonight. You can see it better in the slide. So, because I came here a couple years ago and I actually tromped out there and took a picture. So we went into the field actually. That's one reason there's a fence up. A lot of people were doing that probably.
Ian Ridpath shows his photograph taken with an 800mm lens at half the distance and pretends that's what you can see. You know?
Yeah, he's a fraud, that man.
I know about the lighthouse. Orford has 2 nice little pubs, or used to have. And we used to go out there for lunch and go out and get, you know, the keep and that's left from the castle. Take tourists out there and then take them to lunch.
It's crazy.
And there's quite a history of the Orford Island.
Yeah.
The nuclear triggers for the British bombs were made there, and a whole lot of other high-tech, highly classified experiments were done there. It's an isolated spot. There's very high currents that come through there. It's very dangerous, and people don't go out there. Although I'll have to say my older son and 3 friends swam across there, and as they went across, they went about 100
light
yards
has changed.
because of the current, and they had thoughts that they weren't going to get back. Well, they were out one night, you know, a bunch of high school kids.
Yeah.
I didn't find this out till years later.
Oh, right.
He said, I nearly drowned out there. I said, what do you mean? He's a strong swimmer.
Yeah.
So,
It's
anybody
really...
have any other questions? I was hoping you'd be able to see better, but...
You can if you don't mind getting stung, that's the thing. It's all nettles, isn't it?
Well, I went into the forest there last time. It was even heavier growth then. I got down to my hands and knees and crawled all around in there for a while and took a piece of marking tape and put it on all the trees. I said, this is within so many feet or so of the site. But there's a slight rise, and it was right up in there somewhere.
So that's where the depressions were.
Yes, and I have a picture of one of the plaster casts I brought. I took the plaster cast a couple times on overseas trips, but I had terrible problems getting through customs. No, they thought it was plastique.
Oh, really?
I got taken into custody. So what I finally did to the guy, I didn't tell him this is a UFO print. I figured I'd be there forever. I said, I'm an archaeologist and it's an elephant's footprint. I'm taking it to a conference to show people. They called all the agents over to see an elephant's footprint.
I noticed because you've got it on the internet, the actual photo with you with the
I gave it to somebody to put there.
Oh right, there's a hole in the actual plastic house. Is that
It's very strange light in here. This is extremely atmospheric, this area.
Oh, all right.
And it still has pine needles and all.
Yes.
Although it's been bumped a few times.
I think that's a tractor, yeah. On Capel Green, yeah. If they make that sort of noise, I think some of them do.
Well, he's got a huge tractor. He grows soy and I'm not sure what all else.
Yeah.
But in those days, he just had cattle in there. And the field across from the farmhouse was plowed, recently plowed, when we went over there because it was real rough, with the plow day. So we didn't go too far into the field. We just went across there just to see the better look away from the trees to the sky because we kept seeing things.
So when it was, you said it was, bits were coming off of it, and did you manage to find anything from that, or was it just...
No, I say all we found was evidence that the cattle had been there.
Yeah.
We took the torches and looked all around out there. That's when I said, let's go out in the field. If something has to be there, some burnt spots or slag or whatever. Nothing. We didn't find anything at all. And we knew about where it was because we were standing right here, right at the fence watching it.
That's different from the Maury Island incident when they saw something similar and bits were coming off it, and it was actually red hot metallic substances. That,
well, that's what I thought.
It actually burnt the dog of the guy on the boat. It was very sad.
I worked
the
in a
dog
steel
died.
mill for a while, and I watched the crucibles pour in the molten steel. You know, and it splashes. Bad news if you get close. It's really hot. That's what I thought was the equivalent of. So I thought it was something like melting off it, but didn't find any evidence at all. Nothing. I was really disappointed. And so we milled around out there and went out a little further to get a better view of the sky and saw the object north were out there somewhere. And to the south.
We did have that strange piece of metal that was handed in.
What's the actual side of the
The
indentation?
bit that Ronnie Dugdale
Oh, right, it was
That's
that.
where the indentations were.
Yeah.
In the indentations and in the center.
Not in the field where the stuff was ripping.
Actually,
A
he did
UFO
take
that was
Black
seen
Field, but he
over
didn't get anything.
Ohio,
That's something, isn't it?
something into the
No, he didn't get
snow.
anything in the field.
Right.
So we
Were
did
any
comparisons,
searches
and
made
it's
of the area
identical.
after that?
Yes, they do give off these that liquid metallic slag, and it just...
I didn't want anything to do with it.
Unfortunately, the guy
Go
that
away.
did it died in
I didn't want to be
mysterious
associated with
That's
it.
strange, isn't it? 'Cause,
Yeah.
this seems to happen a lot.
Read the air traffic controller's
Good thing we're not
testimony, what they
scientists.
say, why
Seems to have a lot of people, yeah. Especially if they work for Marconi.
Left you in a spot, didn't they?
Well, the senior officers left me hanging out to dry. There's no other way to describe it. Everybody did this. Why do you think my name's on the memo instead of Gordon Williams? Or Ted Conrad's? They said, you did the memo. They looked at and read the memo and said, okay, give it to Don Warren, and I did. Now, Williams said I'd never let that thing off the base if I'd known that memo. He knew about it. The secretary typed it and showed it to him.
Oops.
John knows this. I've told John this, but nobody else really knows it's true. I was a real good buddy who worked as a watchkeeper at RAF Neatshead, the radar base. And how I got interested in this back in the early 80s was he told me they'd had anomalous returns that Christmas period.
Nick Pope uncovered somebody by name. I can't remember how he has a
Probably
name.
him.
That actually
He
said
died of MS.
we picked up a bogey, is what he called it, and it dropped off our screen in the forest out here.
Yeah.
Well, that's corroborating
Traffic
evidence,
controllers,
yeah.
when they saw, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to read a statement tonight, it went across their scope, the 60-mile scope, in like 2 or 3 seconds, which is 1,000 sometimes miles an hour, came back across the scope, hovered by the tire, and actually looked at the glowing ball, and then it came over here and went into the forest where we were.
That's like what happened in Belgium in 1990 when people were seeing objects, but also the different radar stations were picking them up. And it was...
Well, Nick DeWard, who's a good friend of mine, F-16 Belgian pilot. In fact, he was one of the first pilots. He went to the States to help the transition. And he was a good social friend of mine. He and his wife was one of the pilots on the Intercept. I talked to him later. I was in Belgium. I left in '89, just before it happened.
I couldn't have been electronic countermeasures because
In fact,
different
I know
stations were picking up the same...
Gerald DeWard, who does a lot of talks. Wilford is a good friend of mine. He and I are buddies.
Well, I just say what a lot of people fail to understand is that it wasn't only the Belgian wave, there was a huge wave of identical objects.
all over Europe.
All over Europe, and actually over Colchester, Essex. And we have hundreds of sighting reports. And when I contacted the Colchester newspapers a couple of months ago, they weren't in the slightest bit interested, which is odd because these are not sightings of blobs in the sky. These are sightings of what appear to be structured craft, you know, from people that have seen them close, but very similar to the stuff in Belgium. So, as Chuck says, it's all over Europe.
Well, this was picked up at 2 different radar stations. The tower picked it up. Wiedisham picked it up.
Yeah.
The guys in the tower at the weapons storage area saw it. They actually took a 12-power glasses, you know, the binoculars, and they could see triangular shapes in the objects in the sky.
Yeah. I mean, the evidence is undeniable. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
you know what we're up against.
That's it. Well, it's what it is. It's the way the media handles this is that it's they treat it as a joke and they don't take it seriously. And there's a cultural.
Some things don't make. A lot of things don't make the paper.
Oh yeah,
Are
definitely.
you still in the loop with Black Ops aviation wise?
What's that?
Are you still in the loop of, you know, regarding Black Ops aviation? You know,
No.
oh, you must go beer call sometimes, don't you?
No, I don't go hang around with. No. My older son, who was an air traffic controller. In fact, when we left Woodbridge, we went back to the States, and he decided to become an air traffic controller. I sent him to Oklahoma City, and he didn't like the program. That's where they trained the civilian, and he went in the Air Force as an air traffic controller. And I got him reassigned. He spent his whole tour at Woodbridge in the tower. And he can tell you stories of when the SR-71, whatever, occasionally we would pick it up at 90,000 or 95,000 feet. You know, above us, if it dipped down a little bit, we could pick them up, but it would go across fast too. Not that fast though. So.
We were at the last Millwall Air Show, and they had B2s there, and they had 2 F117s, you know. And you look at those; they're only letting us see those because they're flying something much better than that now, you know.
Oh my, yes. But for when were we in Korea? From 4 years ago?
It was more than 4 years ago.
5 years
like
ago?
6 years ago.
6 or 7 years ago, we went back to Korea and stayed at Kunsan, where I was the base commander. And stayed in DV quarters, which are just off the runway. And while we're going over the quarters, F-117s are all taxiing by. I mean, right over there. You can almost touch them.
And they didn't officially did not exist until was it 1990 or something?
Yeah.
I remember at Mildenhall, I was vision up. I just want to touch this. I put my hand up to touch it. This Marine, his gun goes,
Oh, really?
"No, sir."
Really? Honestly?
Yeah. I think it's because they're worried about you affecting the integrity of the paint.
Yes.
They're very impressive close too, aren't they? And
Now,
B2. amazing.
over here, when we were over here, the night I came out, and all the 15 cops, plus the 5, I say 15, 14, 15, 16, I didn't count them. There's certainly a possibility that Larry Warren was there. He shouldn't have been there. Let me explain why. He came onto base in mid-December. There's a mandatory 5-week training period before you'll be allowed to pick up a weapon or get the clearance to do what you need to do. He had not completed that. Now, they have a document with the right name on it that he was put on duty sometime around the 23rd, 24th or something. May be true. He may have been out here and I didn't know him, but if he was out here, he never left that area because they were given a direct order not to leave there. Because John Burroughs even hitchhiked to ride out with the car coming out, or the truck coming out with the third light off. He jumped in the back and came out in civilian clothes. He apparently heard something. And he borrowed one of the police radios and he called to Airman Bastenza, who was with me, and it's on the tape. John Burroughs calling me, say, "Can I come forward?" And very clearly I tell him, "Definitely not. You all stay there." And he did not come forward. None of them came forward. Now, there's in the book it says there were British police there. There were no British police there. And I have the letters from this constable, 2 letters that say no. There were no British military there. The only British military army there within miles is a TA in Woodbridge, or Ipswich. They were my buddies. I worked with them all the time. We played mock war games with them. I marched in Remembrance Day parades with them. And right after it happened, you know, they all joked and said, "Next time call us, we'll all come on." They weren't here, I can tell you. There were no British RAF people here. The only RAF guy within miles, and he wasn't here, was Don Moreland. He was in Wales on vacation for the holidays. That's why my memo's dated 10 days or 12 days later, because I had to wait for him to come back. So all that nonsense about film crews with tripods and police running everywhere and confiscating films and cameras.
Good story.
Good story.
You know, Warren's fond of waving about this honourable discharge certificate. Am I right in thinking it's just something you get when
Let me
you
explain
leave?
something. We've got a 3910 discharge. You know what a 3910 is? Unsuitability, undesirability. Leave for the convenience of the service. I'm serious.
Yeah, it makes a lot of
But now,
sense. Yeah.
in all fairness to him and to a couple of his buddies, and I have emails from one of his other buddies. 19-year-old goes through training at Lackland, police training. He thinks he's going to be a cop, blue lights, all kinds of things, putting handcuffs on people, like exciting times. Law enforcement, that happens. Security side, which is a different career field within the same organization, they get a badge and a gun, they get set out at a guard post somewhere for 8 to 10 hours at a time, alone, usually. And that is tough to stand around with a gun all night long or all day long. And they come by once a day maybe and give you some chow out of a hot cooked thing, or what they call bag nasty, a box lunch, you know, peanut butter jelly sandwich, an apple, and a piece of cookie or something. Seriously, it's tough. And those guys had a lot of problems. A lot of them got in, I won't say a lot, many of them did get into drugs and so forth. I'll be very honest. And we were short-handed all the time. We had a manning authorization of, I think, 168 cops. But if you took the 40-some law enforcement out and took all the supervisors out, then divided by 4, what did you have left on a flight? Not very many. We couldn't have had 100 people out here. I'd have had to empty the barracks.
Yeah, but you know, Colonel, he did write a letter to his mum. Have you heard about that?
Oh, yeah,
He wrote letters to his mother.
Yeah, he did on the 6th of January, based on what when Adrian Bastenza, who was with me, went back to the dormitory, and I have his email that says, first guy I ran into was Larry Warren, so I told him the whole story, or I told him the story. Then all the other cops are all talking, and he picked up enough bits and pieces, and he put himself into the story. It's amazing.
You know the stream that
Peter Robbins knows all this. He has to know
he
all
does.
this. He's not a dumb guy.
You know the stream you walk through?
Yeah?
Well,
Is that the one in the spit of
Oh,
forest
yeah,
that
sure.
sticks out really the one? The other side.
Okay, yeah, I'll do it in a second. Just ready. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, look at both sides of the story and make your own minds up. That's what I can say.
Stream or swamp or something. I mean, we got all the way up to back here.
There's a little stream.
We tried to find it. There's a stream there. But we crossed the stream and went in, just across the stream, and it starts uphill. We went into the field over there, partway up the hill, just enough to get, so we could see over the trees.
It's pretty dried up.
The only reason we did that is when we were out here, you know, all the trees were obstructing our view this way, so we said, let's go on out and get a better look. But don't wake the farmer out.
Or his dog.
Yeah, his dogs didn't play.
Everybody agrees on that, don't they?
Who knows?
We'll do it.
So that's in essence what happened here.
It's so cool standing here talking to you about this. It's unbelievable.
Literally speaking.
These other rumours I've heard. Were the two bases linked underground or not?
I'm going to talk more about that tonight. I'm willing to put up some big money if somebody can show me the underground facility. Well, he's admitted lying to 3 or 4 different people.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. About the entities, about underground, and other things.
What's under those capped sort of things then? It's just cable.
Well, I was just going to ask that. Yeah, there are holes leading downwards.
Track 10, they're like
Drainage?
just drainage.
Man.
They got signs saying keep out, and there's these holes that go down underground.
Ladders
In the forest?
leading down.
I don't know what is in the forest. But I can tell you, there's no underground tunnel. There's the Intel building had a partly below grade office where they had some safe stuff down there. We're not talking big underground facility. We're talking halfway, 2/3 underground. Now, in 1990 they built 2 new squadron ops buildings over on the far side of the field. I'm told they may have had a room under one of them.
What I'll do is at the end of this,
You can
help me do some intros and
We're
outros.
talking
That'd
an
be
elevator
great.
going down
Thanks.
from what he identifies as the photo lab is the base command post. The base command post, are you familiar with what we built? 3 feet of reinforced concrete base, one way in, one way out, a bank vault door about this big with big pins that go out. Now there's an emergency hatch that's sealed that can only be opened in an emergency. We never used it that I know of. But it just, like a tunnel coming out, a piece of plastic pipe that goes out. And it's hidden, you can't even see it above, you have to break out, you know what I mean? That's just in case the door ever got jammed tight. There's no, I spent so many hours in that place, I know it like the back of my hand. I helped Sarah and John when they were rebuilding it about 3 or 4 years ago, giving them advice as to who sat where and what was done and how it was put together. Of course, he had a lot of other help too. A lot of people helped him.
Well, Colonel, what do you think when it comes to Larry? You know, he had a medical report in which he was injured and he was suffering from, say, bleeding skin.
I'm not going to say this in public. You're not recording this, are you?
I'll switch it off if you want me to.
Switch it off.
Okay.
When the camera was switched off, Colonel Halt did tell me and everybody else what he believed was the cause of Larry Warren's injuries, which he describes in his book, Left at Eastgate, which he co-wrote with Peter Robbins. In doing so, Colonel Halt reiterates something he said on a UFO radio show in December of last year. He believes that the injuries Larry sustained were as a result of his alleged drug addiction. As you can see, I'm enjoying this tour through Rendlesham Forest, but I found this aspect of what Colonel Halt was saying very disappointing, and I'll say more about that later.
I even remember now it happened, and he told me about 5, 6, 7 years after. I don't remember exactly when. He described it to me. Now he tells me it didn't happen. I said, John, you told me. Penniston still remembers it, and so does Warren. And Larry's told me I was messed with, and I know it. I said, you sure you're right about your stories? Well, maybe.
John Burroughs originally, in his original statement, said it was so small he could put his arms around it.
But those statements were made after they were debriefed. That's my problem. So
how can you rely? You can't rely on them, can you?
No. They had their experience. Second night, third night, I was out there. And then after I was out there, I said to Mel Zichter, who's a squadron commander, police copter. I want to talk to everybody individually that was involved and take statements one by one. In other words, I don't want to bring them in a room and I'll give statements. I want one at a time to come in and I'll take statements from them, which I did. Of course, Warren wasn't sent up. But that's when they made the statement. So that was probably 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days later. They had already been debriefed by then. And so stuff may have been planted. Who knows?
That's the whole flaw about it, isn't it?
That's why I always say, I'm not sure, and I don't think anybody is, what actually happened the first night in the forest. We don't know for sure. I mean, we know what they said, but they've said different things at different times, and I don't think Penniston and Burroughs are lying. I don't. Or Cabana-Sack. And I didn't realize, but they also got my good buddy that was out there with me. So, who knows?
So they each in turn experience something different.
Well, it's how can you base any good witness testimony on interviews and the way in which they were treated and if they were given sodium pentanol? And you talk about hypnotic regression. How the hell you can base any reliability on that?
We can substantiate something happened because J.D. Chandler was the master sergeant at the gate. He was a supervisor of the cops that night, master sergeant. He came up to the gate. He's the one that sent Penniston and Burroughs and in fact, he tried to send out Bud Steffens, and Bud Steffens said, "Oh, no, man, I ain't getting involved in this." I knew Bud Steffens well. He said, "Not me." But anyhow, he said, and he told me, and it's in his statement, they saw something mechanical, something unbelievable. That was before they were touched by anybody. So,
well, one thing's pretty obvious. I mean, if the government, like you say, spooks, or the OSA, whoever they are, if the government are doing this, like giving these guys these extreme debriefings, so to speak, then clearly someone in government knows this phenomenon exists and is taking it seriously.
well, I'm not, yes and no. I'm convinced that yes, NSA, DIA, M whatever, Ultra, all these different people were involved, but there's a civilian agency under contract that's removed from everybody and everything, that's pulling strings, and Obama doesn't know what's going on. Clinton did everything he could. I can tell you Clinton did everything, you know. I personally knew his chief of staff. In fact, he's running Obama,
John Podesta?
Yeah, John Podesta.
Oh, he's really into the UFO thing today.
Don't
I mean,
tell me, I know John.
Yeah.
I've talked with him.
He's a good guy.
Oh, he's a great guy. So's his brother. They have some other problems, but domestic problems.
Yeah. And this agency, civilian agency, is this what you're going to reveal this evening?
I don't know it. I only have a suspicion. It's beyond anything that anybody has. If you remember when Clinton got elected, you probably don't know. He said to Warren Hubble, who himself got in a lot of trouble, he said, "Warren, I want to know two things. Who killed Kennedy? And are UFOs real?" And he admitted after he left office, I never got an answer to either one of them.
Yeah, he was interviewed on TV. He was on the.
Well, I know he said it several times. I was very disappointed. Never got any answers.
No. Unless he's, well, according to Stephen Bassett and people like that, he's actually just covering his ass, so to speak, in case information does come to light.
I don't think he was told. I think probably Senior Bush was the last president that knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. Just a guess.
Senior Bush.
From the way things work. Yeah.
George H.W., the dad.
Who knows? Yeah. It won't come out until something phenomenal happens that they can't be denied, or it's time.
Well, I think that kind of has happened already. I mean, if you take into account the Phoenix Lights and things like that.
I disagree, because if you look back to the 40s and 50s, this could be 1946, and we could be talking about what the pilots saw. This could be the 60s, this could be America, this could be New Zealand. All of this accumulated evidence is undeniable. But here we are.
Yeah. But that's what I was saying, John.
These are times where nobody, they will not accept
the direction.
That's what I was saying.
Change the direction at all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I was saying. I was saying that if the evidence we've already got is not enough, then what the hell would be?
What the hell do you need?
Exactly.
But even if something phenomenal happens,
still gets ridiculed, doesn't it?
So long as it's not Woodbridge,
deny that.
As long as it's not Woodbridge Community Centre, because my insurance only covers up to 250 people.
Right.
So anybody else that gets dies can't get any money. So.
Well, the thing is that in terms of insurance speculation, you can't really cover things like that, can you? I mean,
well, I've insured. We've got insurance for.
Yeah, well, but I don't know if I can say this on camera, but what the mayor told you about the posters and things like that.
All right.
Can you say that on camera?
No.
Oh, right, fair enough. No, we'll go. I'll go into that later with you privately, ladies and gentlemen.
But as we say, what changes? Generations come, generations go, people pass on. But the phenomena still, is still here, and it will continue to be here,
So
probably long after we're gone.
Definitely. I mean, it's been with us. It's been with us for
who knows?
For however long?
But will we ever stand up and face it?
Is it possible? I mean, in your view, John. I mean, because I've wondered this. If we're dealing with phenomena that is not only something we don't yet understand, but something we can't understand. So if it could be the government have a wreckage from Roswell and things like that, but they just don't know what it is. They don't know who brought it and what it is.
I agree. I'm sure it's possible. A lot of people associate paranormal phenomena with UFO sightings. I think that the electrical fields around UFOs do spill out and cause paranormal phenomena. And then what are we talking about? Why are we talking about paranormal phenomena on the ground and UFO in the sky? And I mean, is it possible in the years to come that we might be able to explain it all the way rationally? I'm not saying anything to do with Earth technology, but something, a byproduct of what life's all about on this planet.
But something funny did happen.
But it is frustrating when you hear. I mean, it was only a few weeks ago. This guy, David Williams, told me about what he saw as a pilot, which is a perfectly huge silver steel ball sat in the sky. No wings, no motion, just sat there. Frightening.
I'm going to the Washington Post.
The thing shot up into the sky above them, got onto the rear of the aircraft, the tail, and followed them all the way down to the airport. But you might say, that is fantastic, but that's one of thousands that we've heard over the years. And each and every one is still extremely interesting, but also frustrating, because people aren't making this up. So I think ultimately it'd be nice to get some answers.
Definitely, I'd like to. I would do it to see.
We deserve that, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's a very complicated issue. And Robbie Graham, who's got this, he's writing a book called Silver Screen Saucers. He's just been talking about Robbie. He's saying that this whole disclosure thing really is the wrong way to go about it, because it's possible that we're all like children when it comes to this sort of thing. We're all like some kind of animal, and we're dealing with something we can't.
Well, I compare it to the old goldfish.
I get a phone call from the chief of the compromise branch of NSA. I got his name and phone number still.
you know, with goldfish swimming in a bowl, they haven't got a clue what's going on the other side.
Exactly.
So some people relate that to the UFO interaction to us. But the interesting thing about it is that we do have some modern intelligence, and we are able to, within reason, probably, we are able to compare the characters' behaviour time and time again. I mean, they always perform the way in which we.
Burroughs and Peniston,
Yeah.
especially Peniston,
And we are,
tried to get
definitely.
some
Yeah.
medical attention from VA, and they got stonewalled. Their records were a problem too, and they got a whole lot of people involved and tried to help them with no success. And Gordon Williams and I, Williams was the wing commander at that time, wrote lengthy letters to the VA, and they released them, agreed to treat them. I'm not sure they released the records, but they agreed to accept them as patients.
It's all done on tiers and levels, isn't it? Need to know. And
Could this? I should say nothing about this should surprise us, is it?
No.
I mean, anybody that's surprised, as an event like yourself, this is how it works, and this is how it's always going to work.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that we're dealing with a situation where even the keepers, the truth embargo, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, they don't know any more than.
There must be a core.
It's possible they don't know much more than we do.
I tend to agree with you. And of course, if they don't know any more than we do, how can they defend it, or how can they? The best thing is to bury it. The best thing is to ignore it.
Yeah.
The best thing is to deny it to us.
They could be scared.
Maybe they thought perhaps they might be denying it to us because they're seeking to protect us.
In their own way, yeah. I mean, this is a line that some people have taken.
I certainly not. Really.
Timothy Good has said as much, effectively, yeah.
I feel sorry for
Unfortunately, even as children of the world,
What do you
it's about time we grew up and
Yeah.
faced it, bad or worse.
Definitely, John, yeah,
It's
definitely.
something from somewhere else beyond us.
yeah.
It definitely was. Well, I think that night, and probably several nights, there was a mothership up there of some type. Or the three objects in the sky that were triangular may have been large enough. I couldn't tell. All I could see was white light. But the guys with the binoculars, we didn't have any binoculars with us, said they definitely saw three triangular-shaped objects. So what I saw was probably remote piloted or remote controlled or whatever, but it was definitely under intelligent control. How would it go through the forest like this and shut down and miss trees? Gosh.
Now, Colonel, about
Even if you were there with a joystick trying to move one through, you'd have a double the time.
Yeah, Nellis.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can play games sometimes, trying to wander through the maze. Whoa.
now, Colonel, do you know what happened with John Burroughs and his ruling? Do you think this might set a legal precedent which other people will want to use? Because
It's a one-time thing, too much heat.
I mean, you don't think other people could come forward
I
seeking
didn't
criminal
bring
injury?
the letter I wrote, Gordon Williams wrote, but it's a pretty compelling letter. Because regardless, you know, they deserve the medical treatment if they have an issue. Even if it's not service related, I think the VA is obligated to at least take you in as a patient if you've served honorably. I mean, I've never tried to use them, but I mean, that was only fair. And I think they should treat Larry Warren too. I mean, despite the fact he probably needs some other kind of counseling and help.
Well, see,
It's a big problem that you don't know
Brenda's
what's
over there
done to
listening
these
to it
guys. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a common practice
Heard it
of
all before.
OSI to use sodium pentyl and drugs and God knows what,
Right, anybody have any
which is
other
pretty
questions?
weird
Yeah.
weird for interviewing.
Definitely.
We didn't even do that, did we?
I know,
In the
and
80s.
the US government and many other countries as well had a long actually did have attempts to control the human mind through the use of drugs, through the use of hypnosis, and the Chinese communists did in the Korean War, and that's where I think they got the idea, and it kind of like developed from there. And I believe it's still going on today. Our organisation is still going on. I really do. How much battery have I got? Oh, I've got 49 on the battery. That's okay. I've got plenty. I've got another. There's 90 minutes on this chip, and I've got another film chip. So.
Now, I've got two
I'll let you have
segments.
what I've got on here, and you just chop it all. Whatever.
Two
No worries,
segments.
mate.
I want to play my tape for them so the people that haven't heard it hear it.
right.
It's
We've got
on-
the whole version. Or just
Yeah, it's a whole version. It's on Clifford's computer, and so we need to get a mic over there. And I'm going to play Lord Hill Norton's speech. If you've heard it, I know, but a lot of people haven't heard it.
I've not
They
heard
need to hear
that for a long time, so if you could,
it. Yeah, they need to hear that.
I look forward to hearing that.
And I feel very badly because he kept contacting me, and I was still on active duty, and I was a little nervous of getting involved with him for fear where it would go. And I feel badly now because he was legitimate and on the level. I realized.
He was a
But I
good
didn't know
guy,
that
yeah.
at the time.
No, he used to write to us, didn't he?
Yes.
He weren't very happy about writing to us, but he did write to us and he told us what his feelings were. And he actually set up an organisation called UFOC, UFO Concern. He set it up with the
Sounds a bit rude, that.
with the Reverend Paul Inglesby. We met Reverend Paul Inglesby. Reverend Paul Inglesby thought that the whole UFO thing was demonic, was paranormal, supernatural. And in the end, he and the Admiral actually, their views were divided. So then Lord L. Norton created PewFoc. It was UFOC, then it was PewFoc. And yeah, I mean, they tried to trigger, they tried to start something. But God, they got no chance.
Well, they had a good uphill struggle, yeah. But it's a shame that this Reverend
He's banging his head on the wall too. He's not going to get anywhere.
Yeah,
The only way you get anywhere, the only way you get anywhere is to write bloody books. At least if you write books, and when you pass on, the books are there. Nobody, there's still books. That's all you can do.
Well, I've often said, you know, it's not the sort of thing, it's not the sort of secret that you can really reveal. The political structures of this world don't really have the capacity for it. I mean, it's not like, even like Watergate or whatever, you know? Okay, we're moving on now, ladies and gentlemen. See you in a minute. Okay, we're crawling now almost through the bush. This is what Colonel Halt said earlier on about taking us through the bush. He's actually taken us to the edge of Capel Green. There he is, and there's Brenda and the others. We're right by the tall fence at the edge of Capel Green. You can see a tractor. A tractor is working the field in there. You go ahead, mate. No. The tractor is working the field in there, and we may not be able to hear what Colonel Holt's saying. There's a noise of the tractor. This is the old oak.
This is the time where the screen.
All right. Can you guys all solve it?
Come through. Ben, come through.
Oh, I'll go, yeah. So this is...
Can you see somebody driving a staff car down through here and down into that field?
not right now, no.
Oh, never.
There's someone working the fields of tractor in there. It's all a bit...
But you can't see, the farmhouse is there, but there's all kinds of brush growing up now. And the notch in the trees you can't see. We should have looked from down there further, but...
There's that bit where the trees come out.
Yeah, well, the lighthouse is out there.
So is this the oak tree, Colonel?
Yes.
This is the same, it's still here, still growing.
Oh, yeah.
They live for hundreds of years.
Thousands.
Thousands, yeah.
Bill Kimball has a forest of 1,000-year-old trees.
He does.
I know, he took me out and showed me. I said, gnarly old things like this.
That must be something.
There's some over there, the old oak forest, over that way.
Over
There's
there?
the old oak forest.
Is there?
Yeah.
Is that all oak trees?
Yeah, over there, I thought it was beautiful.
There's a lovely spot here. It's a lovely old oak tree there.
It's lovely then, and all before this grew up.
Yeah.
I thought the tree would be dead by now, but it'll probably outlive all of us.
Yeah. This is the principal landmark of the event. Is that right, Colonel? This
Well,
is
the event happened up that way, a couple hundred feet, but I use this as a reference point.
Yeah.
That farmhouse. We're going to talk about that tonight. You're going to enjoy that. You're going to enjoy that. Oops. I have some information. I realized after I read the book closely.
Chuck, do you want to see where Boris's site is?
Look at this fence here. They really don't like visitors. This is not a deer fence.
3 times he took me to the same place that Henderson did. And
Where he's taking everybody noticed over there. If we go down here and turn left, I'll take you.
all right.
This is much more than a deer fence. This is like, we got deer fences in Oxfordshire. They're only about that high.
Yeah.
This one's way higher.
Deer can clear that if he wants to. It's not a deer fence.
It's a human fence.
Deer can jump 6-8 foot fence. I've seen them. I've watched them. A friend of mine in West Virginia has a big garden, and the deer love his vegetables.
Oh,
He had to put a 12-foot fence up.
it's bad if you're driving along and you smash your. Sometimes you get in front of your cars.
But you know what? Bill Kimball used to have a deer farm.
Oh, okay. This is all. This time of year, the good thing about coming in winter is there's less undergrowth. But it just gets so cold here in the winter. It's just like really difficult.
Bill Kimball used to raise deer. line for the meet.
Oh, right.
He also had
Venison.
ramps going up, so they could jump in, but they couldn't jump back out. But his fence was only 6 feet high, and I said, the deer can clear that fence. He said, no, look, about that far back, you get a wire about that high. So they come up and hit that with their legs, and they couldn't get close enough to jump over the fence. They couldn't jump the fence. He said, that wire works. Well, he knew he was raising deer.
Yeah. Clever thing. Clever guy. Clever chap. Okay, cut.
That's where he put the UFO and that's where he filmed it, and he reckoned that's where the radiation is, the microwaves are and everything else.
Well, he's been smoking them funny cigarettes again.
So what's going on there, Ren?
There's a patch of...
John Barrett said this is where it happened, where he stayed at night. And this is where he brought the television people and that when he
However, that's not where he took me for the first 2 years. 3 or 4.
I'll just show you this. We looked at this on the first film, if you remember, but I want to have a look at the...
This was on the first
I want to show you again.
Well, that's when John Barrett
This is the spot, and we saw this on the first film. Yeah.
You know, there's actually clear it round here. You see all the trees? They've actually this circle of trees. They clear it all.
Yeah. Must be some reason why nothing's. Well, there's less growth here. There is growth. I mean, there's some ferns coming through. There's no trees.
Which is the main ingredient in fish. So I know I was at the right place to make the cast. That's for sure.
Well, the only place we ever went to was where a certain young man who I was supposed to have kidnapped took us, and where Steve Roberts took us to on the 2nd of January.
But Steve Roberts wasn't there.
Steve Roberts took us there, that's what I'm saying. He took us there the 2nd of January. He told me about it on December the 31st, 1980. And he took us there on January the 2nd.
Well, he may have been out here with Goulius or one of them when they came out. It was Ray Goulius and Captain Bolano and several others came out and brought 2 PCs with them. I have it on document for a PC when they came out.
Yeah. And they took us to the place we've always called Colonel Halt's place, because the place they took us, that's the place we wrote our book, that's the place we always went, and that's the place that Charles took us to, your son. And that's the place he took us straight there. And I said, well, that's weird. I said, that's where several people have brought us here. But that's where the UFO is, the new UFO is dumped. You know, the big UFO down there. Yeah, I know. But that's where...
Do you mean the big sculpture? The orange squeezer?
Well, it's funny, that's where everybody took us to, and only a few days or a few weeks afterwards. You know, so you got to be...
We're going to have news. It's a famous saying, if a bee lands on you, it's bringing...
Well, that was a very interesting tour through Rendlesham Forest by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, one of the principal witnesses to the 1980 UFO event. I'm very grateful to him for that, and it was really lovely to share that with all the other people there, all my friends. But as I explained, and as you may have detected in some of the things I was saying, there were elements of what Colonel Halt was saying that disturbed me. And I'll be coming on to that later. But for now, let us go to the Woodbridge Community Hall and listen to the man himself and all the other people who were speaking there.
Here in back. A little bit louder, please. How about that? Best I can do. Best you can do. Okay, thanks everybody for coming. It was a lovely evening. How did England do in cricket? Yes, we won. Did we? Yeah. Okay. A few thanks before we introduce our first guest. Obviously, first of all, the main guest when you've all come to see, not second-rate Tom Jones lookalikes, you know. So Colonel Charles Halt, please, everybody. And from my point of view, a massive thanks needs to go to John Hanson and Dawn Holloway for organising this and for being such a driving force in the UFO community for so many, many years. So let's really hear it. Everything you see in front of you, the seats, everything like that, we owe a debt of gratitude to Derek Savory and Joe, his tech, who's done all this, and really, again, it wouldn't be possible without their efforts. And all the ladies who've done the catering for no profit, just to make it a successful evening, which we hope it will be. So, a little ripple, please, for... To all of you for attending. That's really a great turnout. Thank you ever so much. Now, first of all, first guest, just say a few words, is Lionel, okay, who's the Emeritus President of Bufora, okay, if you're familiar with many of you. Lionel Beard, let's come forward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Is the system working, I suppose, is the question? Yeah, good. Well, I've been around quite a long time, count the rings, as they say, but it's the first time I've ever actually had the opportunity to visit Sutton Hoo, so that was an excuse for coming up here today. Excuse me a minute. Right. This is a puff for me, which I was told was what was required. In 1960, I joined the London UFO Research Organisation, and that led in 1962 to the founding of the British UFO Research Association. It was actually founded in my flat off Baker Street. And the inaugural conference was held at the Kensington Central Library in September 1962, and the place was absolutely packed to the doors. In fact, the health and safety wouldn't allow people standing in the aisles these days, but I see there's still a few seats left here, so we're okay. But yeah, very impressive turnout. In fact, I was talking to a couple of guys early on. One had flown over from the Isle of Man. The other come down from Scotland. Has anybody come further than that?
Charles has.
It's a guy from France. Channel from Scotland.
Right. And incidentally, at the Kensington Central Library, 2 months later, a friend of mine, Jimmy Goddard, and a colleague, Philip Heselton, founded the Lady Hunters Club in the same venue in the same year. Don't know if any of you are interested in mysteries. Right, moving on. I should mention, of course, that over the years, Bufora produced an awful lot of magazines and some quite good books and booklets. In 1967, I took over publication of Spacelink magazine. Most people know that I traded Spacelink books in my spare time. And Spacelink magazine actually originated on the Isle of Wight. Janet Gregory was my editor, in fact I saw her a few days ago, and she became Mrs. Colin Board, so she married Colin Board, the photographer, and they went on to publish the Mysterious Britain books, which they sort of sold around the world. Right. In 1967, I started my Spacelink mail order book business. And in case anybody wonders that I make a huge, great profit, in fact, it's run as a tax loss. In 1979, I attended Lord Clancarty's House of Lords UFO debate, and the Majesty's Stationery Office were absolutely amazed how quickly the Hansard covering that particular debate sold out. And 2 further separate books have been published specifically covering the 1979 House of Lords UFO debate. The same year, I coordinated the first international UFO conference at the Mount Royal Hotel Marble Arch, and Non-Metropolitan Hotels, bless them, managed to round up some 400 delegates, which was quite a good number in those days. The same year, I ran the first UFO course in London at an adult evening institute, namely Morley College. And it made national television news. Now, back in 1969, how many television channels were there? 4. But that night...
Can you hold the mic a bit closer to your mouth?
Sorry, where's the guy in charge? Can you sort it out?
Yeah, you.
What can I say?
Is that working? Right, let's try that. It's resting on my chin at the moment. Oh dear, you see I haven't done this before. Right, okay. First International UFO Conference at Marble Arch. First UFO course in London on television. It made the late night television news the same night as the course started. And what happened was that particular night there were 4 TV channels, but ITV was on strike, so there was only 2 TV channels, so everybody was watching the late TV news. So next day at work, everybody said, I saw you on TV last night. So anyway, it actually got better than that, because this news clip was included on the Rock and Roll Years of 1979. So every time Rock and Roll Years came round again, everybody said, I saw you on TV last night. So I've had me 5 minutes of fame. Right. But the theory about the Morley College course was that at the end of the term, the course was well attended, so I said to the principal, I said, you know, can the course continue? And he said to me, I'll paraphrase, but he said, Mr. Deere, if I let the course continue, I've been told by the Education Department of County Hall, which was just up the road in London, that I will lose some of my funding. So Principal Morley College, it's a no-brainer. But you might think, now, is there a conspiracy there somewhere? And I never did get an explanation. In 1992, when I moved to Hampton, I founded the Travel and Earth Mystery Society, because there wasn't a local society. So I thought, right, I'll start a society. And my most recent thing was to start a railway group. In 2003, I founded the Metropolitan Waterboard Railway Society to rebuild the Hampton Waterworks Railway, 2-foot gauge, and we actually have a little railway. Is anybody interested in railways here? Talk to the UFO audience, definitely. Anyway, if anybody's in the Kempston Park area and they'd like a ride on a Sunday, the kids absolutely love it, and so do some of the adults. And finally, can I say, may I applaud John Hanson and his delightful partner, Dawn, for not only organising this event this evening, but for publishing their Haunted Skies series, which contains an awful lot of stuff. And they're now up to volume 11, and volume 11 is really thick. I said to them, you should make them a bit thinner, then the books will be cheaper, but that's the way they're doing it. Anyway, if you've not seen Haunted Skies, I recommend you to, I'm sure there's someone. They're on sale, aren't they, John? Anyway, I recommend their books. So, thank you very much.
Since the late 70s, okay, I was reintroduced to a friend of mine over there, and so I do know the full history of the thing, but what I want to talk to you today is about, as it says on the UFOs and the space program. Now, I've been very lucky in my career. I've been involved in bringing American Apollo astronauts over to Britain to give talks and sign books and stuff like that, and give lectures. And I've actually met over 35, I think now, astronauts, including many of the Apollo moonwalkers, 7 moonwalkers, okay? And when you get enough, although it's true to say some of them are actually recovering alcoholics, but they still seem like a picture of margaritas now and again, you know? And when you get a few drinks done, and they get quite voluble on the subject of the UFO phenomenon. And they're prepared to talk about things which in public they wouldn't necessarily discuss. Okay, so that's just a little discourse of some of this. You won't be able to see that at the back. We've kept all kinds of text. We just have to do the best we can. But let's consider, as it says there, a few thoughts. Firstly, that the reality of the UFO phenomenon was widely known through the scientific community well before the Italian Navy's first space flight in 1961. And that the people chosen to be astronauts and cosmonauts were aware of the fact and were primed to accept the possibility of an encounter. Another slightly more quantum leap is the thought that in the early 1960s it was known or considered highly likely that a moon mission would actually encounter extraterrestrial beings on the moon, that the moon was already occupied. And that was another possibility that actually affected the design of the Apollo space program, 1969-73, and also there was a factor in the cancellation of the last 3 Apollo missions, 18, 19 and 20. And that this factor, the factor that the moon and inner space is actually occupied essentially, if this actually that, we wouldn't be here.
So yes, this is possible. American space flight, or, let's be honest, the lack of it. This here is a triumph of American aviation, the X-15. 8 American pilots actually achieved astronauts' wings by flying this rocket plane built by North American Aviation above an altitude of 50 miles. One of those, in fact, was Neil Armstrong. An incredible piece of it. And it's a very sad thing. Politics has been involved in spaceflight right from the get-go. It's just an incredible achievement to watch it. Very early on in the programme, a decision was made that space would be the provenance of civilians, okay, not the military. And because this was a military project, flown and maintained by the Air Force, the whole idea of putting them in space was handed over to NACA, then later NASA, and it became a civilian programme, put people in space. It is said, that's Edwards Air Force Base in California. It is said, and many people do believe, that the X-15, the ongoing programme, continued as a flak operation, and there is some evidence for that. It was intended to do a kind of super X-15, which was capable of orbital, no orbital flight, and even eventually would have led to what's called the manned orbital laboratory, which would have been launched from a military base, Edwards Air Force Base, to allow the American military to have a space presence, which obviously was desirable, particularly during the Cold War. One of the NASA pilots who flew the X-15, Joe Walker, sadly, you know, we're all getting older. Unfortunately, none of these guys, my heroes, have passed away, and Joe Walker's no exception. But he, during one of his particularly high, his astronaut flights, actually filmed UFOs, and that's a matter of public record. I think it's generally not widely acknowledged, particularly not by the media, particularly not by the BBC, I've noticed recently, that UFOs are not just seen by farmers and random lunatics, they're seen by people in all walks of life, including pilots, astronauts, colonels in the Air Force.
And he actually, you won't be able to read it. I don't normally read off a PowerPoint, but I will do. He actually said in a public meeting, I don't feel like speculating about the UFOs I photographed. All I know is what appeared on the film, which was developed after the flight. And later on, Robert White, another X-15 pilot, again on the threshold of space, 58 miles up, reported a UFO. I've no idea what it is. It's greyish in colour and 30 to 40, 50 feet away. And he then carried on. There are things out there, there absolutely are. Now these are test pilots. These are the cream of the cream. These are the boys with the right stuff, right? Remember Neil Armstrong was one. Scott Crossfield, one of the greatest aviators the world's ever known. Do you meet Scott Crossfield? Now this is you don't necessarily need to listen to, but this is the first press conference made by the crew of Apollo 11 after landing a return to Earth. That's Neil Armstrong. And what I want to do is watch the body language of the other astronauts.
But rather one that took place in the last decade. We all here and the people listening in today have the opportunity to share that adventure over its development and unfolding in the past months and years.
I'll just stop it because he goes on. But that is available. Now I've got a friend, though it may not be a friend if he knows I'm telling you this, who was Norfolk's senior clinical psychologist. He knows diddly about the American space program. Most people do these days. I remember talking to a bunch of kids and saying, does anybody know the name of anybody who's walked to the moon? And the reply was, Buzz Lightyear. And that was from the teacher. So this clinical psychologist looked at us and said, can you tell me about the body language here? And he said, the guy in the middle is obviously the leader. And he is setting an agenda that the other two are not happy with. I said, well, can you elaborate? I said that because it's his name. And he said, he's lying. And the others are continually trying to dissociate themselves from the lie. They're giving it this. And military people, ex-military people, often do this what's called a chin strap mechanism. Like that. And it's like building a barrier between you and the real world. Now, I think they're lying about the possibility of seeing a UFO. And I had, on several occasions, as we see later on, I had the chance to ask Buzz Aldrin about it, and in the end, he was quite forthright about it. I mean, there are other possibilities of what being slightly liberal with the truth, but that's what we're considering here. And, you know, as I say, if you watch the whole thing on YouTube, it's astonishing, the body language and how uncomfortable. Do they look to you like three guys who just had the most incredible experience and what's more, returned safely to Earth? They look like guys who wish they could open their gob and really tell you what would happen when they're out there. They don't. Okay. And here's another classic example. This is the crew of Apollo 10. You know, this is in response to the question, you know, after Apollo 10 came back to Earth. This was the kind of rehearsal for the Apollo lunar landing, the first one, and the lunar module swooped down within just a few miles of the surface with Gene Cernan and John Young aboard. Okay? Now, I met all of those apart from John Young, and I asked Gene Cernan about this photograph, and he said, well, somebody said to us, you know, did you see any UFO? They said, well, not going to lie. Hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. A book was written a few years back in which some really interesting pictures were published for the first time. This I find an incredible photograph. I know in the way. We've got this kind of, this isn't mentioned, but you've got kind of square structure there. It's hard to explain it. I should say I'm an astronomer, right? And a meteorologist, so I know all about impact craters and impact structures. That's my field of. And again, it's very hard. You get a very similar effect to this of rocks rolling and moving about on a flat surface in Death Valley. I'm sure you've seen documentaries about it, where they prove that a 0.1 knot wind lets you move a 50 kilo rock 200 yards. But what you want. But these are on the moon. It's an airless world, there's no water. These are on the Maria Basin, they're much more recent. There's no way of explaining why these things are moving about, or what that square structure is. And this is really peculiar. It appears to be some kind of geodetic dome inside the crater. This is by no means the only image of this form from the moon. I've been through every single magazine, every single lunar orbiter, and looked at every picture, and there's lots of this material. And that's, if you've never read it, the guy's obviously slightly for a loop, but it's a really interesting read. As is this. It's another book published that suggests that there was an agenda, a political agenda, going to the moon. Again, it's slightly overstated, but it's got some very interesting photographs which appear to show some of the Apollo astronauts walking about with the background, some kind of geodetic structure in the back. I'm sure some of you have seen this, but it's very interesting. Here's a fascinating picture. This is Apollo 17. That is the geologist astronaut, the civilian astronaut, Harrison Schmitt. Very capable guy, very powerful geologist. And he's been photographed from roughly, you know, where the table is here. He's been photographed by Gene Cernan, the mission commander. Okay. Enlarge it slightly. Hello. What do we see in his visor here? These pictures were from the NASA catalogue online. There's another figure standing there below the rock on the lower surface, and quite obviously wearing a spacesuit of some sort. But you might notice there's something fundamental missing. This is a picture of Harrison Schmitt, but he's not up there. You can see that has a signal back called PLSS, Personal Life Support System, which this figure here is totally lacking. Well, there's only two explanations for that. Either somebody is on the moon, apart from the Apollo astronauts, a third person who doesn't for some reason need exactly the same survival kit that the Apollo 17 crew, or, if you wish to believe that, it was filmed in the studio. But there are no other possibilities, are there? Just for secondary similitude, this has been schmoozing with the astronauts. I'm sure they're all quite pleased. That's my personal favourite, Malcolm Scott Carpenter, the second American to orbit the Earth. An amazing guy. I'm only showing you this so you realise that the quotes that follow came directly from them to me over a period of time. So that's Walt Cunningham there, Apollo 7. That's the famous Jim Lovell, and you can see what he's got in his hand. He's got one of my little moon rocks. Okay, so that's Jim Lovell. That's Rusty Swiker, who I know also through my work in meteoritics, because he's involved in the Space Guard thing, looking for asteroids and so on. That's Dave Scott, a really great guy, Apollo 15. And so we go. These are all Apollo astronauts. There's Gene Cernan, that's Tom Stafford there, Buzz Aldrin. Have you ever met Buzz Aldrin? He's not an easy person to get on with, Buzz Aldrin, put it that way. Probably why he's had so many wives, you know. This guy, Peter Paget, in a magazine, UFO Matrix, came out with this outrageous statement. Now, I'm not American, and I have my own opinions about some of the Apollo missions or something, but I've met these guys, and they are genuine heroes. These are fantastic aviators, apart from anything else. They're not just some bum off the street who would go to the moon. Okay? And they deserve better than this, you know. Have you noticed that most men after it? I was saying, if you've been to the moon, or if you haven't been to the moon, if you've just been in space, how are you going to react when you think, actually, that's the pinnacle of my life? That's all it's ever going to be now, you know. Even if you're just in high Earth orbit or anything, it must be very hard to come down to Earth again, to normality. And I know that the divorce rate among the astronaut crew, the astronaut community is very, very high. It must be difficult to get on with. Know that, as Buzz Aldrin is fond of telling people, he was told there was only a 50% chance of returning safely to Earth. You know, would you go on a car journey? Do you think there's a 50% chance of ending up dead in the ditch? I know some people would, but so I think that comment was
from depression.
A lot of them do. And having a nice glass. I will say they are recovered alcoholic, but they do like a belly. I mean, Jim McDivitt will drink anybody of any age under the table. His personal, he loves margaritas, nice picture of margaritas. Dick Slayton, sadly passed away. If any of you seen From the Right Stuff, well, Dick Slayton was one of the original 7 Mercury astronauts, and he was found to have medical problems which prevented him from flying until much, much later on in the history of American spaceflight. But he, flying a P-51 Mustang, recorded a very, very compelling account of... I'll just quickly read it. I was testing a P-51 fighter in Minneapolis in 1951. I spotted an object. I was about 10,000 feet on a nice, bright, sunny afternoon. I thought the object was a kite. I realised no kite's going to fly that high. As I got closer, it looked like a weather balloon, grey and 3 feet diameter. As I got behind the thing, it didn't look like a balloon at all anymore. It looked like a saucer, a disc. At the same time, I realised it was suddenly going away from me. And there I was, 300 miles an hour. I tracked it for a little way. All of a sudden, the damn thing just took off. It pulled a 45-degree climbing turn and accelerated. Now, like many of them, this guy's a Korean War ace. You know, he's not prone to flights of fantasy and imagination. Gordon Cooper, in the film The Right Stuff, he's Hot Dog. You know, he's a guy who says, everybody says, who's the best pilot you ever saw? And he says, well, you're looking at him, kid. That's what he always said. And he was apparently very brash, a bit of a womanizer, Gary Get-Go. The most famous thing about him, he actually sent me this terrible person. I sold it to somebody who was desperate to get a copy of it. He actually sent me an autograph saying, I saw UFOs from an airplane, as in not from a spacecraft. But he did, and he later confirmed. Several days in a row, when he was flying in Germany, we sighted groups of metallic saucer-shaped vehicles at great altitude. We tried to get close, but they were able to change direction faster than our fighters. I believe UFOs exist, but the truly unexplained ones are from some other technically advanced civilization. Now, he didn't write that in a magazine, he said it in the United Nations. He later admitted that during his own, the final Mercury space flight that he completed, he saw a glowing green shape, which was actually tracked on radar too. I'll play a bit of this. This is, he's got kind of sun, kind of raw, straw there, you know, you might not get every word that's in it. Sorry about that.
He was supervising the filming of a precision landing facility for F-86 fighter jets. Suddenly, a saucer-like craft flew directly over the camera. 3 landing gear apparatus opened, and the object landed on the dry lake bed.
It was typical saucer shape, double integral shape, and power. And they went out and picked up their cameras and moved them out toward it and found them. And then lifted all, put the gear back in the well, and climbed out of very high rate of speed, dissipated.
I mean, I do accept the fact there's no more reason, particularly, to accept the word of an Apollo astronaut, a Gemini astronaut in this case, or a farmer, really. I mean, you know what you saw, don't you? But he's so forthright about it. It's just, I think some of the astronauts have criticised him, not for, you know, for being deluded, but I think he probably said too much on the subject. You know, Gordon Cooper's a great guy. And this is Scott Carpenter, as I said, and I've asked him twice on 2 occasions, and just confirm it for me. And he said, is it true that you said that no time when our astronauts are in space are they ever alone? Just think about that. This is the 2nd American and 4 human beings to orbit the world, okay, in 1962. And he says that no time when astronauts are in space are they ever alone. There's a constant surveillance by UFOs. Now that's pretty cool stuff, isn't it? That's to the point. You can't misinterpret that. And I said, you know, is it true? You know, the secretary, did you really say that to me? He said, so my personal knowledge is from Mercury, but I believe this continues to be the case. Walt Cunningham, he's a dry stick. This is a photograph taken on his Apollo 7 mission, and many people say it's an object known as the Black Knight object, which was originally perceived that it was originally detected many years before. And I said to him, you know, what do you think about extraterrestrial life? And he said, the idea that we're alone in the cosmos is totally inconceivable. So I said, okay, what about this photo? And he says, junk. I said, this is junk. So I said, well, who's junk? He said, right, that's the question. You know, in other words, he gives, he takes away. Jim looked at it, that's before we got the pictures of Margarita out of the way. He's quite happy to talk about this to anybody. You're going to meet him, he's quite happy to talk about it. He's a really great guy. And he said, on the Germany 4 mission, they saw these two objects, cylindrical metallic objects. And of course he said, you know, people say, were you looking at a Russian spacecraft? Were you looking at the top stage of your Titan launch vehicle? It was negligent, no chance. It was, you know, absolute UFOs in every meaning of the word. And we were slightly concerned at the time. You'll see pictures occasionally online and in books of two other objects. He says they're not the things he photographed, because he photographed. They're lens flares and stuff. There's Buzz. I don't want to spend too long because he talks online about this object, which the Apollo 11 crew had just done what's called TLI, translunar insertion. They'd left Earth orbit on their way to the moon. Okay. And they saw this light from the window, which they resolved into kind of cylinder shape. Mike Collins got his star telescope out to use the navigation and a check. And he said, well, I don't know what it is, what should we do? So they talked about it for a bit. And they thought, well, the only thing it could possibly be is our S4B stage, the top stage of the Saturn rocket. And as it had to Charlie Duke's Capcom, you know, those astronauts only talk to other astronauts when they're in space. So the guy they talked to at Houston, that's not his name, Houston, it's like Sam, is the capsule communicator at Capcom was always another astronaut. On this occasion, it was Charlie Duke, went on to walk the moon. And so he gets in touch and says, Capcom, Houston, what's this object? Could it be our S4B stage? Or where is our S4B stage? And Charlie Duke says, no, your S4B stage is 6,000 kilometres away. So it's okay, right, we just got together in a hub, what are we going to do? And Buzz Aldrin told me that they came to this decision. Either we're inhaling hydrazine or something, and we're all hallucinating, in which case they'll scrub the mission, and we'll have to return to Earth, sling down and come back. Or it's a Russian spacecraft that's chasing us to the moon, in which case they'll cancel the mission. Or else it's an alien spacecraft chasing us, in which case they'll cancel the mission. So you know what they did? Drew the blinds over the window, just pretend it wasn't there. And then someone looked at it and gone. Which is pragmatism of the highest order, isn't it, really? That's what you said. So when people, you hear people say, this is Jim Lovell. He really is, like everybody's granddad, he's a really, really lovely bloke. And he's blown something. You've got to feel sorry for him. This is a guy who went to the moon twice but never got to walk on it. Okay. And he did a Gemini mission with Frank Borman, another terrific astronaut, and this is the account.
Go ahead.
So he says we have a bogey at 10 o'clock time, you know, which, as you probably know, is like, you know, aviation, an enemy or an unknown. Again, I've asked him about that. Was it just a joke? No, it wasn't a joke. It was an object in orbit, a higher orbit than us, and we have no idea what it was. I mean, these are not, all right, these are not earth-shattering, but these are astronauts, aren't they? Okay, so when you hear people say, oh, only twits, fools, lunatics, drunkards see UFOs, it's just not true.
And they were L-shaped and changed.
He said not. He said it was just a cylinder. This is Gene Cernan.
Every time they trained a camera.
No, I've spoken to him 3 times, but it's just a cylinder. The picture you see online is nothing to do with what they saw out the window. Nothing at all. There's a green L-shaped thing, that's nothing to do with it. He has no idea where it came from. And of course, there's always a problem. Well, his wife has got an opinion or a point of view to put across that. And some people reinforce that with slightly dodgy photographic evidence, you know. And that's a particular case in point. There's all kinds of tosh spoken about. I mean, here's rubbish about, you know, Neil Armstrong. God, sir, there's things huge there behind it. Well, he wouldn't call Charlie Duke sir. He'd say Kate, or Houston in this case, or Capcom. You know, they wouldn't say sir, some of his mates. So the minute you see the first word of that sentence, you know it's a load of rubbish. But it's, you know, I suppose it's exciting. Yeah, this is Gene Cernan. He's told me this several times. I'm happy to confirm what I've said before. I believe UFOs are real, that they come from someplace else, from another technological civilization. So I would say you either give people like Gene Cernan credence for all the things he's done in space and aviation, or you think he's a lying maniac. Can't be both things, you know. He's not joking. If you sit down and show long enough. Alan Bean, it just, I don't want to bore you really, but I'll get faster. Alan Bean is like a really amazing guy. He's lovely, fantastic artist, a really smashing, friendly guy, got time for everything. And he's been quite happy to talk about this. That's not a photograph, that's a simulation I did, that's CGI, and I showed it to him, he said that's as close as it gets. And when he was on Skylab, they had these 3 leftover Apollo systems, 18, 19, 20, well they used those to do some missions to have an orbital laboratory called Skylab, and they also did a mission where they met up with the Russians in a Soyuz link-up. But he says, all 3 of us on Skylab 3 observed an apparently intelligently controlled vehicle in our orbit, which led us into the Earth's shadow. And he said it looked, for what it's worth, it looked like one of those Falcon ships, or what we call it, a Klingon Falcon ship, he said it looked like. And he said that's as close as you'll get that picture. The object was never identified, it was Houston was aware of it. And there he is. It's a really nice guy. Edgar Mitchell, I won't play much of this tape, you've all heard Edgar Mitchell's tape, I'm sure, have you? Yeah. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14 astronaut, he's got a hidden agenda because he's always had a profound belief in, not paranormal, but what he calls noetic science, the idea that human beings have got immense potential untapped, and that we are part of a greater consciousness in the cosmos. And he did some experiments on the moon to do that, including telepathy and attempts of communication with alien intelligence. So he is happy to confirm that there was limited but some success. But we've spoken to him many times. Actually, the last time he was at one of the shows we did, we asked him would he be prepared to talk about this. In his talk, and he did. He was prepared to say that the intelligence community's most major power on Earth are not only aware of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligences, they are collaborating with them. And that there are some that are friendly and helpful, and some that are totally inimicable, which is quite a worrying thought. And just play a wee tiny bit.
Wow. So what? So I mean, so you've been briefed on the fact that we've been visited.
Well, I have briefed is one word for it. I have been involved in much of this work. It's not my main work. It's not my main interest. But I have been deeply involved in certain committees and certain research programs with very credible scientists and very intelligent people that do know the real inside story. And I am not hesitant to talk about it.
What is the real inside story?
Well, I've just been telling you. We have been visited.
Are we in regular contact, or was it a one-off crash, or?
Well, no, there's been quite a bit of contact going on. I can't tell you because I don't know.
So he does talk great things. He's online, and there are big lecture keynotes and conferences.
Why here?
Fine. He now has started to attend conferences, but again, he gets upset if people, I'm a moonwalker, a scientist, got a PhD, I'm not just going to talk about UFOs all night, but he's back to it. And he put me in contact with somebody I didn't even know I was talking to. I had a Skype conversation with this guy, and he said, I said, I don't know you, buddy. So I said, well, your address or Skype address was going to like Dr. Mitchell. Oh, wait, how is it? Okay, so fine. And I said, he was telling me, he knows for a fact that certain agencies are in contact with, collaborating with 4 or 5 aliens. He just laughed. I said, he gets everything wrong. So I said, well, it's not right. I said, no, I think it's 11, 12. So I said, who are you? What do you mean, who am I? You must know who I am. No. This was the Canadian Minister of Defence. Okay, he's now, as you know, he's outed himself now. And it's quite a moment for me at the time. It's not just the Americans, the Russians too. This is Andriy Sharapov, and he's Salizan Sharapov. And he had an experience on board the ISS. This is ongoing, you know, and I'm not going to dwell on this, I know we're on a very tight schedule, but he had an incredible experience on board the ISS. Amazing guy. This guy sadly passed away. He was like my deep throat within the astronaut community. Brian O'Leary would have been on board the Apollo 19 or 20 mission, but of course it was scrapped and he resigned in disgrace or in disgust as a scientist astronaut. He's put me to so many things, but you know, this is the last email I got from him before he shrugged off the mortal coil. There's abundant evidence that we're being contacted, that civilization has been monitoring us for a long time. Their appearance is bizarre from any type of traditional Western point of view. These visitors use the technologies of consciousness, they use toroids, they use co-rotating magnetic disco propulsion systems. That seems to be a common denominator of the UFO phenomenon. And there's so many things that guy has passed on to me that it's for another forum, really. That's that black light object that was first detected in 1960, 3 years after the first satellite and the year before the first manned space flight. As I say, it's been photographed, seen, detected on radar, it flies in impossible orbits that couldn't be achieved when it was first detected, it couldn't be achieved during the infancy of space flight. And, well, it just remains to be seen, really. Lieutenant Colonel, the American Air Force. When you read his book, it does, some of it seems a bit wacky. It seems like a guy who's bigging up his involvement. But then when you research into it deeply, you know, deep down inside there, there's obviously something serious going on. He's basically saying, believe it or not, he claims there's been a war in space for many years that we finally won using back-engineered technology and the assistance of some of the friendly, if you like, alien races. If you never read it, if you've never read it, read it. But one of the things he talked about was that modern space flight and aerospace technology would not be available, would not be possible without some of the materials and some of the technologies that have been either given to us or be back-engineered from UFOs. And the classic is the old Roswell bendy metal, which we all know as Baco foil from a railway balloon, site. But it's just been announced that that material is now available and is being used in, well, particularly heart surgery, the valves and stuff like that. Again, went boy, but years ago, I managed to obtain some bits of it, some feed, and crashed. Nobody got killed. Sorry, it was an SR-70 background. And I had to, at the time, know an artificer at another RAF base, Mildenhall. I said, how can I cut this? I can't even cut it with a diamond saw. I want to cut it to make presentations of it. He said, well, good luck with that, buddy. I said, why? He said, you're going to cut that. You need a pulsing laser to cut that. He said, you're looking at 4,000 or 5,000 Kelvin. And I said, well, what do you think? What is it then? He said, and he just said, well, something we got from Roswell. He wasn't joking, he just muttered fact about it. I still occasionally talk to the bloke. It's funny how you talk to some of these materials technologists. So where have we been since Apollo? We're winding it down now. Hardly anywhere is the answer. Since Apollo, 240,000 miles to the moon. The shuttle, which I think is a wonderful piece of kit, incredible piece of kit. Too many people thought of it as like getting on board a Boeing 707. So we had two problems, two disasters, killed the crews unfortunately. It's something astronauts accept that possibility, but it's something the American public I think found hard to accept, and politicians couldn't. But the shuttle really only achieved heights of 500 kilometres. That's nothing. It's hardly in space. The International Space Station has a time lapse which you can see. If you've never seen it, it's really cool. I mean, you can look up and see this thing going out. That's about the height the shuttle used to go to. But you know what? That's such a low orbit. Every now and again, they have to reboost it because the thing is, there's so much friction at low altitudes with the Earth's atmosphere, it slows down and starts coming down again. So have to boost it up to a higher altitude. So it's actually, it's flight program like that, and then down, and then up, and down, like that. So it's not even really in space, you know. That's just to bring it home. This bar here is to scale the distance between the Earth and the Moon. It's 280,000 kilometres, okay? Can you just see that little red line around there? That's the extreme altitude that the space shuttle ever reached. So you can see, you know, since Apollo, it's been spaceflight in spirit rather than actuality. Cancelled. You know, why? It worked. You know? Going to Mars, returning to the Moon, Aries constellation. Cancelled. You want to see an astronaut swear, and here add some few choice expletives to your vocabulary. Ask any astronaut what they think of President Obama. You can guess why. They claim, you know, various governments, politicians have claimed that America will return to deep space, to Mars and to the Moon, you know, perhaps as soon as 2020, using clusters of rocket motors, as you can see, that were first built in 1959. What's the sense in that, you know? Let's assume they went to the Moon in 1969, you know, 40, 50 years later, they can use crummy old rocket motors designed in the 1960s to try and get back in space. Does that make any sense to you? Is money the problem? No, certainly not. If more people knew this in America, they'd be really surprised. The entire audited cost of the entire Apollo space program, from the initiation, by, you know, President Kennedy made his pledge to put man on the moon, until the end of the program with Skylab and Apollo Soyuz, the entire program cost $23 billion. That might seem a lot of money. So far, in Iraq and Afghanistan, the Americans have spent $6 trillion, which is enough money, as it says there, for 260 Apollo program. It's a question of political will.
Is that first figure taken out of inflation?
That's what it cost at the time. That was what was reported to Congress in the program. Okay, but it's, you know, it's still, in real terms, look at the amount of money that Dick Cheney admitted was lost in flight programs. You know, it's nothing compared to that. The Russian Enigma, you know, Alexei Leonov, one of the most famous living Russian astronaut, first man to spacewalk. He's really a great guy. You know, I like a Greek. I like a lot of Greek. But, you know, he's very forthright when he talks about why, you know, why the Russians didn't go to the moon. And he comes up with all kinds of technical things, and you know, the fact their N1 launch wasn't up to the job. This guy here, he was the Popovich. He was the fourth Russian to orbit the Earth. Okay, in a Vostok spacecraft, and he had numerous UFO encounters. His wife, who is considered like one of the world's greatest aviators, she was called the Russian Chuck Yeager, has publicly said in emails to me, Russian satellites have taken many photographs of flying saucers. Russian scientists have concluded, it won't be actually silly, have concluded that flying saucers has been around as long as the planet. And she's seen photographs that she's convinced show human and alien hybrid children. They take it very seriously, the Russians. It's not dismissed over there. Last thing, how could something as big as this be kept secret? How could you keep it secret? Because we are constantly under surveillance, our spacecraft are under surveillance. There's a very good reason why they didn't return to the moon. Everybody was just told, you felt welcome. You know, it's just not welcome, don't come. How can you keep it a secret? He's a really great guy, Bruce Mallett, shuttle commander, and I asked him the question about, you know, people talk about this, that, this and the other. Could you keep something as big as that a secret? And he put me in charge of this guy, and this is what he said. There's a really bad hurricane called Hurricane Andrew that swept through Dade County, Florida, okay? And he went down there with this Petty Officer Howard. He worked for the Coast Guard, for a helicopter. And he said, we spent 9 weeks. I'll certify the death figures that were officially published are totally inaccurate. According to the information I received from my own sources in the National Guard, the figure I was quoted was down there was 5,280 bodies recovered by the National Guard, okay, Coast Guard. These were disposed of in incinerators that were put together by the National Guard and FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. In addition to this, the Coast Guard confiscated 1,500 bodies from lakes and surrounding waters. Neither of these figures embraces the total number of dead bodies confiscated by other branches of federal and state government directly involved in clean-up. Official death toll? 15. That's what was reported to Congress, yeah? And you, if you were cynical, you might say it's got something to do with not wanting to pay back insurance claims to so many people, or if you insure $1 million, it's a lot of money. But I don't even pretend to know why that's the case, but it is the case. If these two guys are to be believed, and no reason not to. I've had that confirmed by other people. But what it does show is you can keep anything quiet if the people will exist to keep it quiet. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that, something to think about. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Tonight I am not going to talk about the American incident. I am talking about the British witnesses involved with the American, or with the December 1980 incident. First, I would like to say that Dot Street and myself, when we first started investigating this case, we never ever thought that would get this big. And a lot of the witnesses who came forward was we interviewed a lot of witnesses before the News of the World article in 1983. So a lot of people can't say, well, they read the News of the World article and then they said they saw something, because that wasn't so. And the very first time that I heard about this incident was in December 1980, on the 31st, it was New Year's Eve, and a security guard from the base came and told me that a craft had landed in the forest, but something had happened in the forest. But he said, please don't say anything until you hear it from other people. Well, I got in touch with Dot, and we decided at that time we wouldn't do anything until we heard it from other people. And then I heard it from an electrician who came to mend the runway lights. I heard it from a gentleman who was a rabbit catcher, who was in the forest and said that he'd seen burnt patches and all the tops of the trees broken down. So I got in touch with my witness who told me, and I said, is it all right if we talk about it now? And he said, well, don't mention my name. And I never ever have mentioned his name, only his pseudonym, but other people know who he is anyway. Anyway, Dot and I started the investigation around the village and around the area, and went to ask different people if they'd seen anything over that time, and got their views and got their statements and that. Now, what we wrote in our book Sky Crash was told to us. It was told to us by the British witnesses, and all we done was report what we were told. We didn't report anything we weren't told. It was exactly what we were told. And the very first incident that I had was a little boy. He was about 11 years old, and he was walking his dog along the beach from Orfordness to Bordsey. And he looked up and he saw a dust cloud. Now, this is exactly how he described it. It was a dust cloud. And he ran home and he said to his mum he saw something coming out of this dust cloud, and it was a green fluorescent light. Now, that was on December the 27th, early in the morning. So his mum phoned the police, the local police, and... Okay, sorry. His mum phoned the local police, and then the police phoned me and asked me to go down and interview the little lad. Well, I went down to see the little lad, and his mum wouldn't let him talk to me because he was too traumatised. But she told me the story that he was walking his dog along the beach, and he suddenly felt something above him, and it was like a dust cloud with fluorescent green lights coming down and going onto the sea. With that, we interviewed some of the fishermen, and the fishermen told us the same story. They said, yes, we've seen lights come out of the sky, green lights, and we've seen them go down onto the sea. Well, then Gordon Levitt, his wife, phoned me up, and he told me the same story. He said he'd taken his dog for a walk, sort of about 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and he was in his garden when he saw a green fluorescent sort of jellyfish type craft come over. We've got his statement, which we've done through a solicitor, Harry Harris, and his statement is on one of the boards over there, and it tells you all about what he actually saw, and it went over towards Rendlesham Forest. We have another couple who was David and Sharon, and they were on their motorbike, and they were coming along the Holmesy Road, and they saw a triangular craft come over with lights on each corner, and that went over towards the forest. Now, we've got quite a lot of British witnesses who saw stuff, and we've got people along the road who stopped and saw triangular craft come over, but let me tell you, not one single person saw it land in the field or anywhere else. All they saw was the craft go over. There was a couple who were in Daisy Walk, just across the road from Rendlesham Forest, and they saw a triangular craft come over with lights on each corner. It went over out to sea. We had Andrew Sheepshanks, who got in touch with Dot and phoned her up and said that he saw a missile-shaped object come over. It was like a cigar shape, and that came over his house and went towards the forest, but he don't actually know what happened to it when it went to the forest. But the next witness we got was a dog walker who walked his dog at 11 o'clock at night on the 27th. Nearly all these reports we've got is on the 27th. We've hardly got any over the 27th. And he said he was walking his dog up the forest when he suddenly saw a lot of lights in the forest. Now his dog was running with rabbits and going after rabbits and that, but he called his dog back and put her on a lead because he didn't know what was actually happening because he saw these lights. Anyway, as he walked closer, he saw 3, I guess they were firemen because they were in like silver suits and that, and they were like radiation suits on. And he said that he saw a missile-shaped object sticking out of the ground in a crater. Now, that is exactly where we call Colonel Halt's area now. That's where he took us to, and that's where the fake UFO is now. That's exactly the place where he took us to. And when we went to interview him at his house, Keith Beebe from the News of the World came with us. He wouldn't talk to us, but his wife said to us she would talk to us. She said when he came home that night, she said he was shaking, he was white, he was sick, and he wouldn't say a word. But the next day, apparently, there was 2 men who came to his house and tried to ask him questions of what he'd seen in the forest. And he wouldn't talk. He was so scared at what he'd seen, he just wouldn't tell anybody. But he told his next-door neighbour, and his next-door neighbour phoned me and told me, and I went and interviewed his wife. And that's what she told me. He came home that night, he was absolutely petrified because of what he'd seen in the forest. But I mean, it just goes on, you know. We've got the local farmers. We've got Farmer Higgins, whose cattle got out because something came over his farm, and he said it was a white cylinder thing that came over his farm, and his cattle got out, and the taxi which was coming by, the taxi driver hit his cow and killed his cow. Now, I interviewed Farmer Higgins, and he said, yes, that's right, my cow got out, the taxi driver came, and he hit the cow because the cow was scared. I interviewed the taxi driver who confirmed that, yes, he did hit a cow on that night, on the 27th. And he said, so Farmer Higgins, anyway, he phoned up the airbase, spoke to the commanding officer, and said, one of your aircraft had just come over, my cow got out, he escaped, and the taxi driver has hit my cow. And they said, well, sorry, sir, but we've got no aircraft up, we've got no helicopters up, we've got nothing. So anyway, he didn't believe them. But the next day he went into the village shop, and the shopkeeper told him that there was an incident of UFOs in the forest. So he phoned up the commanding officer again, told him that he'd heard about this incident of the UFO, and the commanding officer asked him to go up there, and he interviewed him and said what actually happened, and he told him. I don't know how true the next story is, but it seemed to be confirmed anyway, that the Air Force offered him an awful lot of money to sell up his farm and move away, which he did. He moved down to Devon. And I've been in touch with him on several occasions since, and he did not change his story. So that's just another incident of what happened there. I've got someone. And then there was Roy Wilkinson. And Roy Wilkinson was a gentleman who went up on to the Air Force that night, up to the air base, and he saw white lights all around the forest and everything, and he went up there, and there were some security guards come up and asked him what he was doing. He said he was filming the white lights over top of the forest. The security guard then arrested him, took him up to the base, took his camera away and took the film out of his camera, had a look and given his camera back and told him to go. We were getting this all the time of people going up there and saying that, sorry, I've got to go on. The people from Folly House, the old couple, they said at 11 o'clock on the 27th, they heard lots of noises coming and going outside, and when they looked, there was a helicopter with an upside-down ice cream cone-type shape underneath the helicopter, and it was swinging backwards and forwards, and it hit the runway lights, and they had to send for an electrician to come and mend the runway lights. But apparently, whatever the helicopter had underneath it, the chain broke, and it went into the trees, over into the other side of the forest, and dropped this object into the forest. I know you'll hear Colonel Halt later, he'll tell his side of the story, but I'm just telling the British side of the story. And then there was Jerry Harris, who was on the television the other night, talking, and he lived at the end of the air base at Bentwater's base, and he came home from he'd been out anyway to a dance, and he came home at 11 o'clock at night, and he went indoors, and then he thought, what on earth was all that noise? And he heard lots of noise on the base. He came out and had a look, and he saw all blue flashing lights on the base, and lots of noise, traffic going up and down, people shouting and that, and he thought, what on earth is going on? And he just stood out in his garden and just watched all these lights, and suddenly he saw these white lights come over top, went over the forest and came down. Well, he thought they landed in the forest somewhere. And the next day, when he inquired about it, there were some security guards around the forest, and they said, oh, we've had an incident. He said, we found an unexploded bomb. And then there were some security guards there, and they wouldn't let people go into the forest because of this unexploded bomb. Now, there have been reports of unexploded bombs in the forest, and they did cordon the forest off at some stage to get rid of this unexploded bomb, but I don't think that was an unexploded bomb on that incident, on that time. We have, we have the Webb family. I've got so many witnesses here I've forgotten. We've got the Webb family who came along the A12 on the 27th, 28th. They were coming back from a party, a Christmas party, and their daughter Hayley, she said, look, what's that up in the sky? She said, there's a white light coming along the sky. What is it? And her dad stopped the car, had a look, and he said, oh, I don't know, it's moving. So anyway, they stopped and looked at this star, which was moving, but it got bigger and bigger. They realised that it was a big white light, and it went over towards the forest and just disappeared. And then we've got Michael Sims, him and his two lads. His father was quite high up on the base, and Colonel Halt knows him. And him and his two friends were walking along the road, and they saw these white lights coming along, and suddenly these white lights, they burst into three, and they just disappeared up into the sky. And he went to California to stay with his nan, because he knew some of the American witnesses who were on the base. And unfortunately, I was watching the news one night, and they said that he'd been murdered, and he'd been murdered in a hotel room. But he wasn't the only witness that we had who we found out had died. We had another lady who, she was a witness, and she said she saw what happened and everything, and not long after that we heard of her death. She was 26 years old, and we heard of her death. So I don't know, ufology is a bit deadly, but there was lots of things that, yeah, Dot and I went round the vicinity anyway, around the area, and we were interviewing dog walkers who were going round the forest, and who'd been round the forest on the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th of December, and they were telling us that they didn't see anything. They hadn't seen anything. They hadn't seen anything happen to the cows. They hadn't seen anything happen to the forest. There were no trees cut down. The roads weren't blocked off. The forest wasn't blocked off. And they said they hadn't seen anything untoward that had happened. Another gentleman who I met in 1987, and he'd been walking his dogs around the forest, and I made friends with him, and he said he lived up on near Orford Ness, and he said he lived high up on the cliff tops there, and he had a very high powerful telescope which he looked out at sea, and on the 27th of December he looked out at sea because he saw lots of flashing lights, and he said there was a boat moored out there, or a boat docked out there, which I guess was the HMS Norfolk, because we do know that was out there over those the Christmas period for a week. We do know the fishermen were told to stay out of the waters over that time, and we do know there was a Russian submarine off Orford Ness. I've got photographs of it just straight in front of me over there. And there was also a Russian Tupolev going up and down the waters. There was a helicopter searching the waters. And this was all about on the 27th of December. And he was saying that he saw all of this activity, and that was all going on. He didn't know what was going on, but he said there was helicopters flying, and there was lots and lots of activity. So, I'm sorry, but I think my time is up. 5 more minutes. Oh, okay, I've got 5 more minutes. Okay, thank you. And so anyway, we've had several things happen, Dot and I have. If nothing happened down there, I mean, tell me why we have been bothered by the police, we're bothered by the MOD, our phones have been tapped, we've been followed around. Dot had her children, you know, she had her children threatened and everything. We've been threatened, and you know, even down the forest up until about 4 or 5 years ago, we had the police come down there and they used to check us out. They used to check all of our cars, our car numbers, and I've had people come to my house, I've had people stand in my drive, and you know, so if nothing happened, why? Why all of this? And Peter and I, Peter who's here now, Peter Parrish, we went and done a film up on one of the hills up near Rendlesham, and we done filming. And as we were leaving, Peter will tell you, there was an army jeep that came and that blocked our way. As we were coming down the road, it blocked our way. And we then sort of, Peter put down his foot and he went round the jeep, and it followed us up the road, and it actually chased us up the road, and it had army guys in it. And we quickly went to Sutton Hoe, and Pete suddenly took, we were doing about 80 along here to get away from it. And Pete suddenly took a drive, went up a driveway, and it went round the back of a golf course. And the guys went past, the army jeep went past. Anyway, we went back to Pete's and had our tea, and that night we went back down the forest. And no sooner had we got down the forest, and we started taking photographs, and that we were taking photographs of orbs and all different things. And suddenly this police car came. Well, first of all, there was a police helicopter above us, and it was shining down lights. And then the police car came up, and he stopped right beside us, and he said, what are you doing? And we said, nothing, we're just taking photographs. And he said, well, who are you? You know, what are you doing? And we said, we're taking photographs. And he said, well, where are the photographs you've been taking? So Peter and I both showed him the photographs, and he'd go, "Oh my God, I didn't realise that." He said, "I don't think I'll come down here anymore on my own." You know, and he was really sort of concerned about what we'd been taking, and they were only orbs, you know, the big white orbs. That's all they were. But why? I mean, you know, you've got to think why, after 35 years, you know, why are they still bothering us? And we are still being bothered. We still do get telephone calls. We still do have the police come and check us out. You know, there's such a lot of conspiracy. There's a lot of cover-up, a really lot of cover-up. But when Colonel Halt comes on next, in a few minutes, you will understand why there is a cover-up as to what he's got to say. But I won't give up. I'll still carry on, whatever. Whether I get threatened or whatever. And yes, we have been threatened to be annihilated, and if we don't shut up. We were taken to the, Dot's here, she'll confirm, we were taken to the British MOD with Jenny Randalls, and they asked us to sign a paper to say that we would stop going into Rendlesham Forest and interviewing people who don't have any more to do with it at all. Anyway, Dot said she would. She said, no, Dot said she wouldn't sign the paper. And Jenny Randall said, well, I'll sign it. And I said, well, only if that's going to harm our British intelligence, or if that's going to harm anything, then I'll sign it. I said, but you prove to us what happened on those nights, and if you can, then I'll sign the paper. And they said, no, they wouldn't tell us. So I said, well, I'm not signing the paper then. But I mean, that's only one incident that we've had happen to us. So, anyway, I'm sorry, that's it, I'm afraid. That's really just a general.
Here is the hall, packed out, full of people. Yeah, nice one. Yeah, completely packed out, people. Come on, I'll show you the cake. Let me show you the cake. This is unbelievable. Just get a load of this. Isn't that incredible? Get a close-up shot. Is that all right? Give me a sec. Oh wow, that is amazing. That was done by these people. John organised that. Large numbers of people here. And here is his books here, The Uninvited Companions and Our Forbidden Moon by David Bryant. It looks interesting. And this jewellery, meteorite jewellery. All these are meteorite, pieces of meteorite which have fallen to the earth from space. Just going to have a look at the stalls on the other side now. Oh, speak of the devil. We were talking about that earlier on. And this is another Encounter at Rendlesham Forest is the other way. That is the other side of the story. So Lionel's stall is very, very ecumenical. Tells you all, gives you all the different points of view. But there's some amazing books here. Hi Lionel.
400 UFO titles at home.
Yeah. This is the gentleman we were recording. We've got you on camera.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Honorary President of Bufora. British UFO Research.
Still exists.
British UFO Research Association. Some orb photos here. Oh, excuse us. Thanks. And there's another stall. Now this is the most interesting stall of all, I think, because this is where we have lots of old magazines. Now these are classic magazines. UFO magazine, X-Files magazine, and this X-Factor. I used to read that when I was a kid, and that got me into what I'm interested in now. It got me into doing Hapanwo. Paranormal magazine. Really, it really is almost like a museum, like an archive. And there's these really old ones here. Look at this. Flying Saucer magazine from When's this? 1960, February 1960. These are 25p each. The Hunter magazine, autumn 1982. Flying Saucers, blimey, February 1960. I think that's the cover of this, isn't it? Right, in a moment we're going to cut this famous cake.
You're going to
Isn't
eat
it
some?
beautiful? Well, do you think I'm going to get a piece? I mean, it's not. I don't think there's enough to go around.
Aww.
But I'd like to get some. Isn't that, look at that.
That will be the way I cut it.
Wafer thin.
Wafer thin.
Oh, isn't it amazing? Look at
I
that.
want a piece of the spaceship.
Oh, wow. And there's a picture of Colonel Holt. That's not icing, though. That's just a
No, I think what we
picture
should
of
do
Colonel
is
Holt there.
cut a slice for Colonel Holt and his son.
Do you want
Yeah.
him to cut it for you?
He won't do it now.
Oh, we won't do it.
No,
Are you and
no.
Dawn going to do it then?
That's a beautiful cake.
No.
Yeah, I said John and Dawn should be cutting it, not me.
Oh.
But they won't do it.
Well,
John,
maybe you're considered an expert in this sort of thing.
I like cake. Which maybe
Who doesn't?
But I was going to say.
Sorry.
Just stand by the cake.
I was going to say, and then is Dawn going to get you and Dawn in it as well?
This is the famous moment where the cake gets cut, and I've shown you the cake, and it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's really well designed. Fantastic. Okay. Colonel. Colonel, sorry to interrupt, but John would like you over by the cake, please.
Have a photo taken, a ceremonial photo. That's fine.
I told the Colonel, I told him. Oh, this is it. Oh, look at this. Yay! Perfect. Oh yeah.
I feel guilty. Have you taken a photo?
Oh, I have. I got some stills of it, and I've filmed it several times. Oh, you have to.
We need you as well.
He's gonna hold. He's gonna.
Okay, everybody, Colonel Holt is going to cut the cake.
Yay! Yay!
Charles.
He's having the first piece. Right in the middle of the UFO.
Charles.
Oh.
Charles. Charles, just look up. Charles is going to cut. Charles, could you just look up?
Hey, I've got plenty of icing there.
Can you cut in there?
Yay! Oh! Nice one.
Charles, just one.
Oh, he cuts it on top. Dot's got the cake. Got the first slice.
Smell, come on. Smell some.
Perfect.
Okay, the main event of the evening, you all know who it is, Colonel Charles Holt, and there may be a chance for questions at the end, okay?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me in the back okay? Okay, good. Well, welcome everybody. It's always a pleasure to come back to Suffolk. I have to tell you, I had 13 different assignments in my Air Force career over almost 30 years, and this was probably the most pleasurable, and I have very fond memories of Woodbridge, Bentwaters, and the whole surrounding area. It was really an enjoyable time, and I hated to leave. Actually, I was supposed to be here for 3 years, and I managed to scrape a fourth year with begging and pleading
and had to go though. I know you're very interested in what happened in the forest in December, but let me give you a little background. I was born and raised outside the city of Pittsburgh, had a very, I guess, normal life, did the normal sports, etc. with the Boy Scouts. Actually, I got to come to Sutton Park, England, to represent Boy Scouts of America at the 50th Jamboree, Jubilee, the 50th anniversary of Scouting. That was my first taste of England, and I enjoyed it very much, although I'm not a pork pie fan, I can tell you. I went through normal schooling, went to university, got a degree, got married, settled down. One thing, I never had any experience, never reading anything or hearing anything about UFOs the whole time I was growing up. I did have one, I guess, encounter, you might say, not with UFOs. My family was involved in a local parish church, and they had a rummage sale. I think you have different names for them, but the garage sale, rummage sale, yard sale, where all the ladies in church gathered clothing, unused clothing, appliances, books, you name it, and took it to the church and invited the public and made a little money for charity. One of my jobs was to bring the boxes in from the cars and help sort things out. And one particular box had a big load of books in it, and I was an avid reader. So I thumbed through the books and I found a couple books of great interest, including one by Donald Kehoe. Maybe you all know who he is, about UFOs and pilots or something to that effect. So while the ladies were busy peddling the goods, I sat down and read the book, and I found it very interesting. However, I put it aside and got on with other things, got married, got faced with the military draft, which is conscription, decided to go into the Air Force, which I did, and forgot all about UFOs, and never had any other inkling to even think about them until 1980. So I don't belong to any UFO organizations, I don't subscribe to any magazines, I just have a little bit of interest, and I've received tremendous amount of correspondence and interest from people that are very serious, and have had the opportunity to work with some of the best researchers in the United States, people like Leslie Kean, Robert Hastings, John Alexander, Dick Hall, all of them. I've worked with them all, and very impressive, and I've learned a great deal, and I can really appreciate things. Let's get back to Bentwaters. In 1980, and many of you know some of this, but I'm going to go over it anyhow, Bentwaters, the 81st Attack Fighter Wing, was the largest tactical fighter wing in the free world, composed of the two bases, you're familiar with Bentwaters and Woodbridge, 4 FOLs, forward operating locations in Germany, where we kept 6 aircraft and crews and necessary equipment, and 2 standby locations in Germany. The concept of operation was, if the Eastern Bloc countries came through the Fulda Gap into Germany, they'd have to bring their armor, their tanks, their heavy equipment, and all the support stuff through the Fulda Gap. Our mission was to move forward and go kill tanks and shoot up trucks. The base would then have been backfilled with F-4s and I think F-16s in the later days, and they would pick up pre-position stuff and take the war, so to speak, to the enemy heartland. Those were pretty tense times, if you remember, 1980. We exercised all the time. And you haven't lived till you put on rubber boots, rubber gloves, a gas mask, a rubber suit or a chemical suit, which had charcoal impregnation in it, and try and operate and wear a flak vest that weighed about 40 pounds. I must have spent 1,000 hours in the command post under those circumstances. And that's the only part of the assignment to Bentwaters that I didn't particularly like, but that was something that came with the job. Those were interesting times. Remember, the Chinese were shelling Quemoy, Matsu, and threatening Taiwan. The Red Army faction was loose in Germany, kidnapping American general and doing things. There was all sorts of activity in Poland at that time. The Union was going crazy in the streets, and almost as bad as the current world environment in the Middle East right now. But it was still an enjoyable tour, and we had a great time. I was assigned to the Pentagon prior to coming to RAF Bentwaters. I was one of those people that the Personnel Center called up and said, how would you like to do a special assignment, career broadening? I said, tell me about it. I've spent 18 years in aircraft maintenance. In fact, the Hush House at Bentwaters, anybody familiar with the Hush House? No, I guess not. It's a big facility that you back a fighter aircraft in, and you can run it at full bore and afterburner, and the neighbors aren't disturbed. You can hardly hear anything outside. One of my jobs in the Pentagon was to be involved in the selection and purchase and operational deployment of those facilities. An interesting thing happened along the line. It was a Danish design, and we decided to modify it. The original design had fire suppression system with big water sprinklers in it. And we came to the conclusion that if we had a couple fighter aircraft in there with the cockpit open and the sprinklers went off, we'd probably lose several $1 million worth of electronic equipment. Somebody came up with a bright idea to put breathable foam in it. So we did. Well, they wanted to test it, so they got a volunteer and they put him on a tether and put him inside and they fired the system. Well, when they evacuated the foam, they found him dead on the floor. The problem was he didn't breathe the foam, he had a heart attack. Well, that slowed the program down, but we went ahead with it and Bentwaters got a hush pop. Well, let's get back to 1980. I arrived here in early spring, late spring I guess it was, 1980, as a deputy base commander. And my primary job as a deputy base commander was to make things run smoothly on the base, to support the base and wing commander and make sure everything was functioning properly, and try and, I should say, put out the fires before they got burning. In that capacity, I spent a lot of time on the base. I went to the dining hall late at night, I spent time in the fire department, I hung around personnel, and especially rode around at night with the police, because that's when everything seemed to happen. And those guys always knew what was going on. Even if it was just gossip, you learned an awful lot. That was part of my job. The base commander was busy greeting people, signing documents, many of which I prepared, cutting ribbons, kissing babies, doing a lot of political things. And I stayed in the background pretty much, just made things move smoothly. Well, the first part of the year went very well. No big issues, things fell into place. We got a new base commander, came in, Ted Conrad. We decided to have a year-end party, family type affair, to more or less recognize people for all the accomplishments during the year, and to give a few speeches, pats on the back. We were going to have a Christmas party, but we didn't get our bid in fast enough for the two facilities on the base, so we had to do it on the 28th, I believe it was, of December after Christmas. We still called it the Christmas party. It was a covered dish dinner. You know, the wives, their spouses brought a dish, and we provided meat and whatever, and it was a good time. We just finished the main course when Lieutenant Bruce England. Lieutenant Bruce England was the on-duty flight commander for the security police. Now let me back up a few minutes and talk about the security police so you'll understand things as they go on a little later. The security police had approximately an authorization of, I think it was 168 people. Of those 168 people, approximately 40 were law enforcement. Law enforcement wore blue uniforms, blue trousers, carried a sidearm, a nightstick, and a radio. They're cops almost like a PC, except they had a gun. They do the normal things, write traffic tickets, answer domestics, investigate crime, maintain the main gates, just a normal cop. Then we had the security police, an entirely different career field that overlapped a bit, but it was primarily air-based ground defense. Defend the base, protect the weapons, protect the aircraft, make sure everything that was priority resources, so to speak, was protected. The law enforcement people, you can imagine what they did and went through normal training. The security people went through special training. They learned how to operate heavy machine guns and various and other kind of things. I won't go into all the details of what we had, but we had some pretty sophisticated stuff. In fact, when I was at Kunsan in Korea as the base commander, we had Stinger missiles, which is handheld air-to-ground missiles, and a lot of other stuff. But the security people were, in other words, heavy weapons guys. Air Force Marines, if you want to, probably the best way to equate it. So there was a difference. And there was a problem there. One of the problems we had was 18, 19, sometimes even 17-year-olds, whatever, would come into the Air Force and they want to be a cop. Well, the recruiter would say, wow, I got openings in security police, and they jumped and took it. They went through their training, great. They came to the base, and what did we do? We gave them an automatic weapon, and we set them out in the middle of nowhere for 10 or 12 hours, and all they saw was a security supervisor occasionally, and maybe a meal if they were lucky, and usually that was a box lunch, which they called bag nasties, where they brought we might call it eggs in an aluminum container which turned them green. They were still edible. It was a tough job, and we had a lot of issues with them because, you know, try and stand out somewhere alone for the middle of the night for 12 hours or 10 hours, whatever the shift was. And so we did have issues occasionally with drugs, with drinking, and behavioral problems. And I'm not saying it was widespread. I'm just saying that that particular career field was fraught with more issues than probably any other career field we had. So now that you understand that, also the police were broken into flights, 4 flights, A, B, C, D, and E, both law enforcement and security. Law enforcement would have about 10 people on a flight. 2 driving around in a car on Woodbridge, 2 driving around in a car in Bentwaters, a supervisor called the flight chief driving around both, a dispatcher, and then an odd person here and there assigned to one of the cars. Security had something similar, only they were much larger. They were assigned, and they worked out of what was called Central Security Control. The law enforcement worked out of the law enforcement desk. Central Security Control was superior to the law enforcement desk, although they didn't meddle much. But if there was something serious on the base, an intrusion or something like that, Central Security would take over. So now you have the understanding how the police work, so when I start talking about things, it'll make a little more sense. Anyhow, we had the dinner, and we're getting ready to get up, take a break, and have dessert, when Bruce England, who was the on-duty cop, drinking cop, and Bruce was not a young lieutenant in a typical sense. Bruce had been 4 years in the Marine Corps, had gone to college, gotten a degree, came in the Air Force, so he was a very, how should I say, mature lieutenant. Probably more mature than some of our captains were. But anyhow, he's a good guy. Bruce came in to the officers' club and said, "It's back." "What's back?" Said, "The UFO's back." Now let me back up 2 nights so we get the sequence right. On the night of December 25th, the morning of December 26th, Boxing morning, I guess you'd call it. Wasn't it Boxing Day, the 26th? I stopped by the police office, the desk sergeant, to find out, what's going on about 6 o'clock in the morning, and pick up the police blotters. The police blotters are the chronological listing of everything that happened the previous night, or previous 24 hours, rather. And I walked in, and the desk sergeant was Crash McKay. That was his nickname. He was a staff sergeant, a buck sergeant. And he started laughing. And he had a good sense of humor, so I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "Colonel, you're not going to believe this. Last night, Burroughs and Peniston and Cavanagh were out in the woods chasing UFOs all night, and the lieutenant said, 'Don't put anything in the police blotter.'" I kind of laughed. I thought it was a joke at first. And I said, "Well, what do you know?" He said, "Well, somewhere," and I think he said around 12 or 1 o'clock, somewhere in that neighborhood, he said, John Burroughs, who was Police 4 and Police 5 were at Pentwater, or Woodbridge Base, went up to secure the back gate, the east gate. Now, we normally man the east gate during the day. It was a shortcut between the 2 bases. Otherwise, you have to all go down the roundabout through Ike and around and back up. We locked the gate at night because we just didn't have the manning to maintain it. So the maintenance people would continuously get the combination of the gate, because at night when they were working, they'd want to run back and forth and not go all the way around. So it was on their checklist every hour or 2 hours to check the lock on the gate. So Burroughs goes up to the gate, it's locked. But he looks out and he sees something in the forest. Now in those days, if you went to the east gate and looked out, all that area of trees there now, there was no, low field, not mowed, but there was no growth over about that high, and you could see all the way to the Forest Service Road, and you could see halfway through the forest toward the Capitol Green. He saw something, red, green, blue lights, and flashing red. Well, the first thing came to his mind, a crashed airplane. So he walked back to the guard shack, which, by the way, is not what's there now. There's a new one there. It was an old wooden building with a telephone, and called the desk sergeant and said, "I think I've seen a crashed airplane." Of course, the desk sergeant panicked, and he immediately called the control tower. He called the command post. Everybody's saying there's nothing reported, nothing flying. They called RAF Watersham, which is Eastern Radar, we call it. They had air defense for that sector, nothing. They even called Heathrow Tower. There's nothing flying in your area. There's nothing reported done. So there's great concern amongst the cops. So Master Sergeant Chandler, who is the senior NCO on duty, comes up to the gate. Jim Peniston comes up to the gate, who is the flight line supervisor, and several others. And they're all standing there looking, and they all see the lights. So what do? According to them, what they did is, first of all, they selected one of the officers, Bud Stephens, who said, "Not me, I ain't going out there." Kind of funny. But so Peniston stepped forward and said, "I'll go." And John Burroughs said, "I'll go." And poor Airman Cavanagh, who was the lowest ranking guy there, said, "And you'll go." So they checked their weapons with Sergeant Chandler. They jumped in a 6-pack truck. They drove out to Eastgate Road. They turned right. They went up the road about 150 yards. They turned left. There used to be a big plaque there. There's a Forest Service gate there now. And the road leading down into the forest was very rough, irregular, and if you didn't have a high-center truck or four-wheel drive, you wouldn't have gone down there and gotten back. Anyhow, they drove down there. They went down probably 400 or 500 yards to the last trail, or whatever you call it, to the left that goes parallel to the Forest Service Road. They went up in there and they parked the vehicle and they saw something in the woods. Now this is all what they told me. I was not there. They were having problems with the radios, and that's unusual because that's flat out there. The radios are line of sight and they normally work well. There are some dead spots and we know where they are, but not out there. So they leave Cabanas a little bit behind them as a radio relay so they could call him and he could call back to the gate. They go forward, and exactly what happened after that, I'm not really sure. When I called them in and interviewed them, I called everybody that was involved in one by one and had to make a statement and draw what they saw. And Burroughs and Peniston drew triangular-shaped craft with multicolored lights, 9 feet on the side approximately, smooth, with the equivalent of hieroglyphics is the best way I can describe it, strange markings. Peniston claims he touched it. Cabanas says he thought he saw Burroughs when it went up in the air, get beamed up into it. Something happened to them out there, something very remarkable. They came back to the base, and of course they got debriefed, and nobody wanted to touch it, of course. This is, we don't want to get involved in this. I picked up the blotters, and of course I had them put something to the effect in. They saw lights and didn't know what it was, and they weren't really sure. I do know one thing, there was about 40 minutes that we couldn't account for where they were. They were off the air for about 40 minutes. We do know that for sure. Master Sergeant Chandler and the rest of them are still up at the gate. We're in a panic. They were getting ready to send another team out to find out what happened to them. And I'm going to tell you more about what happened. I found out many years later in a few minutes. Didn't think too much of it. I thought there has to be an explanation. And the senior officers kind of had a, well, we don't know, and chuckle or whatever. Nobody knew what to do, so we just kind of put it aside. The next night, and I didn't find this out until 6 or 8 years later, and I was long gone, the on-duty flight lieutenant that night was Bonnie Tamplin. Bonnie Tamplin was a female, and the 1980 female cops supervising male cops didn't go over very well. It does today, there's no issues now, but back then there were problems, and the fact that she was black didn't help her either. I liked her, she was phenomenal. I thought she was a great guy, a great kid. Anyhow, she apparently saw something, and she and Master Sergeant Ball and I, and something happened to them. I don't know what happened. I was told she threw her gun down and ran. I have never been able to verify that. She left the base a day or two later and supposedly had a nervous breakdown. I never related the two or was told, there was any connection. I was never told she was out there. She's in Italy now and doesn't want to talk about it. So I have no idea what happened. That was the second night. So let's go back to the party, the third night. When Bruce comes in and we talk, Ed Conrad, who is the base commander, says, well, I've got to make the awards and presentations and give a speech. And besides, I don't think I want to go. You go home and change clothes, and you go out and investigate. And I said, I'll go put this thing to rest. I'm sure there's an answer. So I went to Mel Zickler, who was the squadron commander for the security police, and I said, I want one of your good NCOs to go with Bruce and I. And he said, well, guess again, Bobby Ball just happened to be on duty. He said, great. I knew Sergeant Ball. He was very responsible. I went to Sue Jones, who was the disaster preparedness officer. I said, who's on standby? Disaster preparedness has the equipment to deal with radiation, biological, etc. And then she said, Monroe Nevels. Well, I knew Sergeant Monroe Nevels from exercises. And I knew he had a degree in photography, even though he was in disaster preparedness. And he did a lot of freelance work for the base newspaper and did good work. And he had a Nikon F2 and an F1, which I had too, so I knew he knew what he was doing. So I said, well, call him and have him meet me at his office in 30 minutes. We're going to go out. I want him to bring an APN-27, which is a Geiger counter, and his camera. We're going to put this to rest. And, confirm there's no radiation, there's no anything, and we'll take some pictures of whatever we see. I've got a little pocket recorder, which I carried everywhere I went anyhow. We had a dictaphone system in the office, and I didn't like to take notes, so I always carried a pocket recorder. I went home and changed clothes. Bruce England and Bobby Ball and Sergeant Vistenza, Adrian Vistenza, a young cop, staff sergeant I believe at the time, came by and picked me up at the house. I put my old fatigues on and a field jacket. It was 35 degrees that night and the wind was blowing. We went down to the disaster preparedness office, picked up Sergeant Neville. He calibrated a couple of the APN 27s and he said to me, I remember, which one should I take? I said, how's the calibration? He said, they all calibrate fine. I said, take your pick. So we picked up one APN 27. We all piled into the Jeep. It was a little crowded. We went down to the motor pool because he wasn't sure he had a full tank of gas, which is on Bent Waters. It's right inside the gate. We're right inside the gate now on the industrial side. Put a little gas in the Jeep. And there is another vehicle in there pulling a light off. Light off is a motor generator, big yellow thing. We use them on the flatline with two fluorescent lights. We use them for security. We use them to illuminate work areas. And they told me there's already a couple out in the woods. They won't work right. What? Well, anyhow, they were fueling that. We went on across the base, out the back gate, actually went the same route that Peniston and Burroughs went the first night. Out the gate, turn right, turn left, down into the forest, turn left. I get out there, and there's probably 15, 16 cops, 3 vehicles, 2 or 3 vehicles, 2 light alls, and they're all milling around. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is a public relations disaster. If we get caught out in the woods in uniform with all this equipment in the Queen's Forest in the middle of the night, we'll make the headlines in the paper. We'll never live this time. So I said, all right, everybody, knock it off. Quiet. Stay right here. No noisy radio communications, nothing. Now somebody mentioned, Brenda I think mentioned other, but somebody seeing lights in the sky. That was probably the light alls, although I don't know. I arrived there, and Bruce England says, the landing site's out there, where supposedly an object landed on the first night, the morning of the 26th. Okay, I said, let's go out there. Well, he brought a starlight scope along, a first generation night vision scope. So we look into the woods first, and I think I see a glow in a certain area. I'm not really positive, but anyhow, I said, what's in there? We've marked the site. So he took me into the site, and lo and behold, there's 3 indentations, about that big, 9 feet apart, where Peniston and Burroughs said this craft had landed. Clifford, you want to put the others, flip up a slider? That's the wing headquarters. Sorry. Go ahead, and one more. The object, solve that. Just a second. I got it. The area was right back here where the object landed. Here is the farmer's house. Here is the lighthouse over here. You can't see it very well in this picture. The lighthouse is there. In 1980, there was no hedgerow here. You could see all the windows in the farmhouse very clearly. Anyhow, we're milling around here, looking at the site.
Microphone, please.
Microphone. Oh, I'm sorry. Microphone. I'm accustomed to have one stationary. We're milling around and looking at the site, taking radiation readings, and we find that the radiation is about 8 to 10 times higher than normal background in the indentations and slightly higher in the center formed by the triangle of the 3 indentations. You want to go forward a slide or 2? Now, there's the lighthouse on Orford Nest. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. Another slide. That's Orford Nest. Go ahead, keep going. The tower at Woodbridge, air traffic control tower. Go ahead. Woodbridge, air traffic control tower. This is the east gate. Looking out, the gate's right up here. That's all new. That's all new. There used to be just a wooden shack right up there. Next slide. That's the new gate. That's been changed. It was just a simple gate before. Next slide. This is looking down the road now. This was all open field, all the way out into halfway to the coast, or to the Capel Green fields. Next one. Another shot out the gate looking back. Go ahead. This is, if you go out the gate, turn right, and then turn left, this is the road going down into the area where we were, where we found the object or whatever it was. Next one. That's a sign there just before us. Sign. Now, that sign used to be right where that pipe gate was you saw 2 slides back. They've moved it somewhere else now. Next one. This is the area right here where we parked in the forest. and went into the forest in there. The farmer's field's out here somewhere. This was taken 2 or 3 years ago. Go ahead. This is approximately what it looked like on the forest floor that night. It's not exactly the same spot, but it's nearby where it looks similar. Go ahead. This is the plaster cast. Jim Peniston went back the next morning because he knew nobody would believe him. He lived in Ipswich, and his landlord, I understand, was a plasterer. So he got plaster of Paris and went back and made some molds, 3 of them. 2 of them have disappeared. He gave me one for keeping. The one that he knows disappeared, he put it in his household goods. The household goods, are shipped back to the States. It was in a small cardboard box, which was labeled, inventoried, taped up, put inside a larger cardboard box, put inside a wooden shipping crate, which is huge, sealed and caulked, nailed, sent to Indiana. When he opened the box, the cardboard box was there, the small box inside was gone. Oh no. Okay, just leave that up for a while. Well, we were told, go back to the lighthouse. Let's talk about that a little bit. These slides back on. Well, here's one now, I'll go on. Some critics have said we saw the lighthouse. We saw the lighthouse. We saw the lighthouse. The lighthouse is about 30 or 40 degrees off to the side. The lighthouse is interesting. I spent some time with Pete Simmons and Marcella, his wife. He's the lighthouse keeper. And asked him about it, what he thought and his ideas. He said, let me tell you something. The lighthouse is shuttered. If you're out on the sea, you can see a green and a red light depending upon where you are. If you're on the land, all you can see is a white light. We saw the white light. The object we saw, and I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, was glowing red. Red, not white. And the whole time I could see the lighthouse, just barely, you could see it over the trees. You want to go back another slide or 2? Yes, that's good. We stood here. Here's where I saw the object I'm going to talk about. The farmhouse windows on the lower and upper level were bright. The farmhouse was dark. There were no lights in the farmhouse. I was concerned for the safety of the people in the farmhouse because I didn't know what was happening out in the field. All I could see was flicker like flames on their windows. Again, the lighthouse over here. You can barely see it. Anyhow, we're milling around. We're taking radiation readings. We're measuring the distance between the triangles, the indentations. I had Sergeant Neville's with the ATM-27 go to the nearest trees. The side toward the 3 indentations had slightly higher readings than the slide on the other side. There were marks on the trees. I don't know what they were. Rub marks? I don't know. They may have been blaze marks. But if you looked over, there was a heavy tree canopy. These are mature Corsica pines, a strong canopy. But if you looked up at that site, you could see, and there were broken branches on the ground, sort of indicating that something may have come up or down. I don't know. But while we're milling around there, Bruce England, Lieutenant England says, look over there. There's a red light. It's moving. So we look at it and we watch it. It's out in the field. It's out in the middle of that field between us and the farmhouse. I said, let's try and get a closer look. Well, as we started to go forward, it came toward us. It came into the forest. It moved through the trees, up and down, bobbing up and down, like this through the trees. As we got close to it, it backed up. It receded back out into the farmer's field. We looked close at it, and it looked like an eye. It was oval, about, I'm guessing now, because it was 100 yards, 50 yards, whatever away. About that big. It had a very dark center and a very pronounced red around it. It appeared to be shedding like molten metal. I can remember I worked one summer in a steel mill and I was watching the crucible when they poured and the stuff splashed. That's just what it looked like. And I thought it was either sparks or something that was burning falling off it. We watched for a minute or so and the object silently explodes. Silently into 5 white objects, just like fireworks, and it disappears. Well, I can't explain this, and I'm thinking, well, I wish I'd never come out here. Nobody's going to believe this nonsense. I thought first ball lightning, but that wasn't ball lightning. Ball lightning doesn't do that. So I said, let's go out in the field and see if we can find any residue from where this object was shedding whatever it was shedding. So we climb down over the berm, there's a big berm there, over the barbed wire fence, and out into the field. We look everywhere, and the only thing we found was evidence that the cattle had been there because somebody stepped in it. But there were no cattle in the field, but they had obviously been there. So we're not too far from the tree line, so let's go further out so we can get a better look at things. So we went down past the farmer's house, right along the right-hand side of the farmer's house. There's a road out front. We crossed the road, and there's a small stream. We stepped in the stream, and everybody got wet up to their knees at least, which we weren't very happy about. And just across the way was another field that had just been plowed. So we went out there and we're looking back, trying to see if we could see anything, and we noticed objects to the north in the sky. They're elliptical with multicolored lights on them. My guess is 3,000 to 4,000 feet up. So I was continually talking to the command post what was going on. And so I said, can you have radar look here? And I give a description. And they come back and say nothing. Can't find anything. The objects turn to full circles. They're still illuminated with multicolored lights, and they're moving in synchronous together and making sharp turns, 90-degree turns. The only thing I could think of was a grid search or something. I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. Then I think Neville said, look to the south. There's two bright white lights out there. So we looked down to the south, and sure enough, there's two bright lights, almost like landing lights. Thinking, wow. One of those approaches overhead, directly overhead, at very high speed, stops, and sends down a beam, like a laser beam. It was about 10 or 12 inches in diameter, and was right over there. And I about went into shock, and I'm thinking, wow, is this a weapon? Communication? A warning? What do we do? And then suddenly, as it appeared, click, it disappeared, and the object went back to the south. At the same time, the other object moved over Bentwater's base and was sending out similar beams. Now, we had 3 different radios with us. We had the law enforcement radio somebody had, I don't remember which one had which one. We had the security radio, and I had the commandment radio. In other words, I could talk to command posts, they could talk to Central Security Control, and they could also talk to law enforcement. I could hear chatter on the security net that the guys in the WSA were seeing things, and there was something going on over there. That's all I know. I don't know the details. I wasn't there, but I will read you some things later on that are very interesting. So the one over Bentwater stopped sending down beams after a while, but it stayed in the sky, and we watched it probably another hour, and it was getting close to 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Nobody seemed to be interested. Nobody seemed to want to respond. Nobody seemed to care. So I said to the guys, I'm cold, wet, hungry, and tired. Let's pack it in and go home. So we did. We went back to the base. I went home and took a shower. I couldn't sleep. I was still like this. So I decided to get down to the office. And I went down to the office, and we shared the building with the wing commander. He was on the left-hand side looking at the building. We were on the right. And as I went in, the wing commander came in. That would be old Gordon Williams. And he smiled at me and said, you must have had some light last night, because he watched the radio all the time. I don't think he slept with the radio. He said, what happened? I told him a little bit. And I said, I got a tape recorder. He said, play it. So he and I stood there and he played it for him. He said, let me have it. I said, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. He said, I'm going to take it to the staff meeting on Wednesday and play it for General Basie. I said, there goes my career. So all week, I think it was Sunday or Monday, I can't remember which day it was, I was sweating all week. I knew when he went to staff meeting, when he came back, I was waiting for him. And he came in and I said, well, boss, he threw me the tape recorder and laughed. And I said, well, boss, do I have a job? He just laughed. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, I played the tape for General Basie and the staff. He said, they all sat there quietly. And General Basie said, well, is Halt credible? He said, yes, I believe what's on the tape is right. Basie looks around, nobody says anything. So in his infinite wisdom, he says, well, it happened off the base. It's a British affair. Case is closed. So I said, well, what will I do? He said, get with Don Moreland. Well, Don Moreland was the liaison officer. Don Moreland was in Wales for the holiday. He lives in Anglesey Island. I knew Don real well. We were good friends. Great guy. So I had to wait till, I don't know, about the 9th or 10th or whenever when he came back. He had a civilian deputy. I went to him, but he just said, not me, I ain't touching this. So when Don came back, I told him, and of course he says, oh, me. We didn't need to know what to do. He said, so I'll call some people. So he called his supervisor, who was a I think a commander over at Lincoln or Mildenhall rather, 3rd Air Force, and they talked about it, and one of them called MOD somewhere, I don't know where, and he said, well, write a memo. He said, okay. So I wrote the infamous memo, which I can show you on the screen in a few minutes. And the idea was I would give it to him, and he would very discreetly send it to MOD. I'd never hear any more about it, but if they wanted to investigate, they would send somebody up to investigate. So days went by and nothing, weeks went by and nothing, a month went by or two, and he made many phone calls and talked to many people, and nothing seemed to happen. And I was relieved, man, I'm off the hook. This is done, it's gone away. All was quiet. 2 years go by. 1983, a young man we put out of service, and we can talk about that a little later, is unsuitable, undesirable. That's what a 3910 discharge is, and you can verify that. He did get an honorable discharge, but he was literally booted out. Picked up a story from Adrian Buspenza, apparently, and I have some documentation on that, and some of the other cops, and suddenly put himself into the story. Interesting. He went back to the States. We sent him back to the States. He was talking to MUFON and a few other people when he ran into a couple authors who were writing a book called Clear Intent. Maybe some of you have read it. Larry Fawcett and Barry Greenwood. 2 great guys. Well, they pick him up and they're all excited. Boy, here's a case we can't pass up. We're going to put this in our book. It's going to be the crown jewel of the book. They get working with him, and he finally confesses to them he was lying. I have that in writing from Barry and from orally from Larry Greenwood, or Larry Fawcett. He contacts me, Larry Fawcett does, and I said, well, I'll help you with the book if you keep it honest and straightforward and stick with the facts. We signed an agreement. I sent it off. Well, they lost interest in it after what Larry Warren told them and all the problems. There were issues about my memo, my tape. It got sold to the Japanese, it got news to the world and everybody else. It got so convoluted that nobody knew what was going on. They said, enough of this, and they backed off. They put a bit in the Clear Intent, but that didn't really cover that fully. So again, I thought it was pretty much closed. Then I get a call from Larry Warren, and he's working with Peter Robbins. So I said, Larry, you weren't there. I sincerely believe he wasn't there. Now, and I've been telling him that for a long time. He's produced a document signed by Lee Swain, who was the first sergeant, putting him on flight. Now, what probably happened, and I bet I can only guess to this, he should have had 5 weeks of training after he got there. Mandatory before you go on flight. If we got caught putting somebody on flight that didn't have all the training, and an NSI team or a Taco Bell team came in, the wing commander would have had serious problems, and his career maybe been endangered. It was serious. But we had had a drug bust and had, I don't know how many, half a dozen cops or something, decertified. So we referred him, so they may have put him on flight. I can't say he was or wasn't. He could have been in the forest. If he was in the forest, he would have been with the group back at the Forest Service Road and not close enough to have probably seen much of anything but hear the radio chatter. That's what I think happened, but I don't know that for a fact. And we're going to talk about that book in a little bit. So, very interesting. I got approached by News of the World. Oh boy. Keith Beebe. Anybody know Keith Beebe? He's one of their editors. He offered me 20,000 pounds. And I said, oh boy, this would be nice, but I said, well, maybe I could donate it to the Air Force Aid Society. So I went and talked to Ernie Persky, the JAG. He says, no way. So I told Keith, sorry about that. Well, he said, okay. He came back later, and the gate called me, the gate guard, and said, Keith Beebe's out here and wants to see you. He wants your bio now. And I said, I said, I'll talk to him, but he can't have my bio. I got thinking, I'll bet he's going to come in. My bio was in Public Affairs, which was right across the street from us. So I ran over to Public Affairs and pulled my bio, the whole file, everything, pulled it out. And of course, they weren't happy to take it, but I didn't ask. I just went in over the door and took it. They come in, we talked briefly. I told them a little bit about it. And he said, okay, and he went over to Public Affairs. Well, what he did is he pulled Gordon Williams' file, the wing commander, took his picture. You want to flip back a few slides and show them the News of the World. You may have seen it. Go ahead, forward.
We need to take a break in a bit, Colonel, yeah?
We're going to go back to that in a few minutes. Keep on. There. Poor Gordon Williams. He's an innocent victim. Suddenly he starts getting all these phone calls. And I had to convince him I had nothing to do with it. I mean, he believed me, but I told him what happened, and he just kind of chuckled. Well, he's taken heat over for years, too. There's two different ones. There's another one, I think.
Colonel Holt, we need to take a break now. Yeah?
Pardon?
We need to take a break now for 5 minutes, yeah? Take a break for 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right, sorry, folks. We'll take a break. And I'm going to go into a whole lot of other things that very much relate to the issue. I made a tape recording, and I took it back to the office, and I played it for my boss, obviously, and Gordon Williams played it for General Gabriel. And my boss at that time, Ted Conrad, said, make me a copy. So I took my tape recorder, and he had an identical one, went in the conference room, laid him on the table, and made him a copy. I gave it to him, and he put it in the desk drawer, and we all forgot about it. Well, he left. We won't talk about service. But anyhow, he left for promotion, I guess the best way to put it. And Sam Morgan came in. Sam Morgan and I had some issues. His children had gotten in trouble with the police, and the police asked me what to do, and I said, you do what you would normally do, and they did. And of course, the cop told Sam Morgan that I was the instigator behind it, and they'll send him over to his house, and he was just incensed that a cop with a uniform and a gun and a badge would come to his house and talk to his child. Well, that all kind of got swept under the table, but he was furious. So when he left, they needed a replacement, and Gordon Williams decided to put Sam Morgan in as a base commander. He'd been down in maintenance. Sam Morgan was running around telling people the first thing he did when he got in the base commander's chair was to fire me. Well, it got to me. So I went looking for a job. I had several good friends in Germany who are now retired generals, and I called one Bill Barrett, and I said, hey, Bill, we'd gone to OTS together and gone to maintenance school together and stationed together. I'm looking for a job. He said, well, we have an opening at Ramstein. We need someone. We'd love to have you. So he went to the general at Ramstein, who called then General Pascoe, who was our wing commander, and said, will you release Halt? And Pascoe said, hell no. That's exactly what he said. And then he called me on the carpet and said, what are you doing? Looking for a job. I said, well, Sam Morgan said he's going to fire me. He said, he'll do no such thing. Don't you worry about it. And he didn't. But Sam had a chip on his shoulder. He played the tape and asked me what it was. I told him. And he thought, He started playing it at cocktail parties, and he gave it to a British solicitor by the name of Harry Harris. Harry Harris sold it to a Japanese producing company for 20,000 pounds or some such ridiculous figure, and it found its way back to the States. That's how the tape got out. That's an abbreviated version. The memo, Larry Fawcett, as I mentioned earlier, the original guy that was working with Larry Warren that wrote Clear Intent, was looking for, he heard there was some memos and some correspondence. So he came to the base, and Jack Cochran was then the base commander, and asked for copies of everything. Of course, we didn't have anything in the file. The only copy was a carbon manifold. In those days, we had select typewriters. We didn't have word processors. And I had it. It was a personal thing. And so Cochran went back and said, we don't have anything. So they went to 3rd Air Force, and General Gabriel had left. And Pete Bent, who was also a good friend of mine, we'd gone through basic commander school together, was the acting 3rd Air Force commander until the new general came in. So he got the request, and he asked the staff, and apparently the RAF liaison officer said, oh, I've got something in the file. So they pulled the file copy out, and Pete saw my name on it, so he called me up, and he said, I've got this memo. And I said, how did you get the memo? He said, well, I got it from the RAF. I said, oh my God. I said, burn it. He said, what? I said, burn it. He said, why? I said, my life and yours will never be the same if you release that memo. He released the memo to Larry Fawcett. Larry Fawcett shared it with people in the States. 1 or 2 of them are in this room tonight, or were. And next thing you know, I'm at BBC 1, BBC 2, ITV, German TV, Radio Orwell, East Anglican Times, or whatever it is, some people from Japan, some people from Germany, and the place went crazy. I had to go into hiding almost. I said, oh my God, that's the last thing in the world I need. I said, this is not career enhancing. I was up for promotion at that time. Anyhow, that's how the documents got out. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about, I was going to do a whole lot of other things and play some sound clips, but we don't have enough time tonight because some of them are 15, 20 minutes long. But I am going to go through a couple of other things. For those of you that read the Left at the East Gate, I'd like to give you some updates and some potential corrections that Mr. Warren and his cohort can put into their next book. If you take the original version And you look at page 32. He claims we had a helping hand. We had no helping hands. Helping hands is a very serious report that gets up-channeled, and everybody in the base would know about it, trust me. If you go to page 39, it says the base was on alert. The base was not on alert. We were at a party. Williams was at a social event. There was no alert. He shows a picture in the book of alert sign, but he cuts off the top. It says alert status, but he cuts off the bottom line because we have a slide-in thing that says what the alert is, but you can't see that because he's got sandbags up. And he said, I've got pictures of it, but I don't have time to put all that up for you. We won't get done tonight. If you go to page 42, he claims he was a captain at the motor pool. There was no captain at the motor pool. The security police captain. We had two, Captain Saul and Captain Verano. Guess where they were? They were at the party. If you go to page 43 and 44, British police were present. I have 2 letters from Suffolk Constabulary establishing exactly what was in their log, what they found, and where they were. They responded twice. Once, the first night after everything was over, they came out. It was too late. They found nothing. They came out the next afternoon, found the indentation, and said, well, that looks like hen scratching the rabbit drippings or whatever. That's the only 2 times, and they say it very clearly in their document, which I'm going to give to somebody tonight when I leave, that they only responded during that whole period 2 times. They had serious burglary at a post office, and they had a lot of other things, but they did not respond other than that. If you turn to page 44, there were hot spots. We had them flagged and roped off with surveyor's tape. We don't use surveyor's tape. 40 people were out there. Originally it was 200, then it was 400, now it's 40. There were, at most counting us, 25. Page 46, Gordon Williams drove out in his staff car with his staff and Don Moreland. Don Moreland is in Wales. The staff car could not have been driven down that road. We had troubles with the Jeep. And he drove into the field. He would have had to go over a big berm. We needed a tracked vehicle and through a barbed wire fence. Said we had the British police. I just mentioned that. 12 people were debriefed. Now that's certainly possible. I think there were 6. But I don't know because I didn't find out anybody was debriefed until years later. His security clearance was upgraded. We in the base did not upgrade security clearances. That required a lot of action, a lot of investigation. You don't upgrade a security clearance, just that. Underground facility, let's talk about that. I was taken to the photo lab and put in an elevator, and my ears crackled or whatever as I went down into this big underground facility that had a UFO in it, had medical staff that examined me, they had a cafeteria. The building he identifies and has pictures and is in his book is a command post. The command post is a hardened facility, reinforced concrete, sits on 3 feet of reinforced concrete with rebar in it, has blast shields around it. The door is like a bank vault with big steel pins that slide out. There's one way in, one way out. Now there is an emergency escape hatch, but it's sealed, and we never opened that seal. That was an emergency. It could not have been the command post. We don't have any underground facilities at Bentwaters. Now, in the 90s, they built a new squadron building, I'm told, over on the far side of the field, and it may have an underground facility, but that was in the 90s, and that's nothing like is described, this huge facility. Oh, I was kidnapped and loaded into a car, a limousine, a Cadillac, or an Imperial. I was gassed, and I was taken to this facility. Nonsense. He has New York plates that he remembers in hypnosis. Why didn't somebody check those plates out back in 1983 if they're going to write a book then? It would have been very easy to verify the plates at that time. It didn't happen. Or maybe it did and there weren't such plates. Page 136. All the squadrons on the base had a big meeting to discuss it. Nonsense. We didn't have any big meeting on the base. Claims he had a sidearm. We did not give security police sidearms. Law enforcement had sidearms. They got M16s. Major Zickler was there and fell in the mud. Major Zickler was at the party. Air rescue was activated and flew overhead. My racquetball partner was Charlie Wicker. Charlie Wicker was a wicked racquetball player, man. He beat me every time, but we had a good time and we were good friends. I talked to him a day or 2 later, and he said, why didn't you call me? We would have put a chopper up. And if you remember earlier, and I have statements from the air traffic controllers, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, nothing was flying. It was Christmas time. Nobody was flying in the area. The closest track was civilian tracks down near Heathrow. Nothing was in the area. We talk about cloudbusters. This is a good one. You're going to get a kick out of this part. We had cloudbusters. They call them, what do they call them? Reich, I can't remember the guy's name that designed them, but they actually probably do work and alter the weather. And he saw these devices on Ventwater's base that were trailer mounted. My next door neighbor was Carl Baroth, the DCM, the commander for maintenance. Carl Baroth had a great sense of humor and was quite a character. We were very good friends. We knew when the Russian satellites would fly over. We discussed it all the time. We knew exactly what time they were going over. There were, I think, only 2 of them in those days. So Carl Baroth welded a bunch of barrels together and made a bunch of dummy missiles and a dummy odds and ends and would paint them different colors and move them around the base every time the satellites would go over. And that's what's pictured as the cloudbusters. And even Georgina Bruni has it in her book. You'll see one in there called a cloudbuster. It is not a cloudbuster. It was a dummy designed to drive the photo interpretation people in Russia crazy, trying to figure out what we were doing. Pictures in the book of underground facilities with vents. Those are our fuel bladders. They're covered with earth for 2 reasons. Number 1, blast protection, and number 2, to help stabilize the temperature of the fuel. And if you look closely at the picture, you'll see the plumbing in front of them. Weapon storage area. He says this is where certain weapons were kept. Well, that's where we kept the weapons, yes, the bullets, so to speak, for the A-10s with the depleted uranium in them. I talked to Bud Hopkins. Many of you probably know who Bud Hopkins is. Bud Hopkins and I became good friends. In fact, my wife and I were house guests several times with him. And he had actually interviewed Larry Warren and regressed him. And his comment to me was, screen memories, induced memories is the terms he used. Many times I talked to Larry in the early days trying to put him on track to keep things going because I wanted the book to come out and I wanted it to be right. And I just got beat up every time. But he did admit many times that he'd been meddled with. Well, we all knew that. He'd been drugged and hypnotized. He talks about somebody that committed suicide and went missing. At one point he says it was Alabama, his roommate, and other times he said it was a cop that read the Bible all the time and different things. And he had problems, said he went AWOL, went to Chicago. We actually had somebody at that time frame do something like that. He didn't commit suicide. I went up to the police desk one night, and Sergeant Turner was the flight chief, and again Crash McCabe was on the desk because it was C flight, and Craig McCabe was usually the desk sergeant. And they were in panic, and I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "We had a young airman that didn't get his security clearance right away, and we put him on casual status. He got frustrated. He folded up all his uniforms, put them on the bed nice and neatly." This sounds like a classic case. Bought himself a ticket and was flying home. We traced him through Heathrow to a flight to Chicago. We've just called the Chicago Airport Police. They're going to put him on a plane back because we don't want him to be charged with AWOL, because that's a serious offense. He'd go to jail for that. We'd rather he get an Article 15, which is non-judicial punishment, and probably get a fine or a reduction or whatever. And they got him back. And they sent a police car down to London Heathrow, picked him up, brought him back. He didn't commit suicide. Let's talk about soil analysis. This is the good part. There are 4 things I'm told that substantiate Larry's story. My memo. Does anybody see his name anywhere in my memo? Number 1. Number 2, my tape. Well, that incriminates him because Bobby Ball, who he claims was with him, and Sergeant Vistenza, who he claims was him, was with me and they're on the tape. Listen to the tape carefully. Vistenza's security 10. And Bobby Ball was security 4 or something. I don't know. But if anybody's gone through the tape, and I have copies in the narrative, they were with me the whole time. Vistenza never left my side. He was in shock and so frightened he stuck to me like wallpaper. I mean, I couldn't get rid of the guys like this with me all the time. He was so nervous. The 4th thing is the best one. The field at Capel Green, where the UFO landed supposedly, which nobody else, by the way, can substantiate or verify. The soil analysis says the area was subjected to high energy or high heat, and the grass around the edge is very green. When I was growing up, my grandfather was an avid gardener, and every fall he would burn a big pile of brush and branches and whatnot. Then he would take the ash and put around his lettuce and everything. One of the main ingredients of a fire like that is potash. Potash, potassium, the 3rd ingredient in fertilizer. Now, if you've ever had a hot brush fire, normally it gets up around, I'd say 1,400, 15 to maybe 2,000 degrees, and it stays hot for a long time. The sandy soil, yes, turned into almost glass. It was crystallized. What do you think did that? It wasn't radiation, it was heat. The farmer burned brush. All the farmers burn brush. Brush is a constant problem. Anytime you leave a field sit, you know what happens. Things grow. If you don't keep plowing and moving or send cattle or something in, it's a problem. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Guess what? You're up with 0. I have all the correspondence from the police, which I'm going to share with my good friend who's sponsoring this. I have letters from Barry Greenwood. I'm going to read you just a little bit of this. Just to say, I'm going to leave copies of all this to be put in a future publication here. One evening on the phone, Larry Warren decided to confess his non-involvement in his part of the story. I'm just reading a little bit. I don't have time to read the whole thing, or I would. That's what Barry Greenwood said, co-author of Clear Intent. This is Dr. David Jacobson, former professor at Temple University, who's very well known in the abduction field. He's written many books, and he was a partner to Bud Hopkins. In fact, he inherited all Bud Hopkins' files. What he says, I was the MC of a UFO conference in Massachusetts around 1986 when Larry Warren got up in the audience and exonerated all the UFO researchers for doing a lousy job of researching not only Bentwaters but his personal experiences. He went on to say how he had been kidnapped, taken into some sort of a room underground, and and various things have been done to him. I told him we had to be very careful and so on. He later admitted that he was lying. That's Dr. David Jacobson. I have all the original documents of these, by the way. Here is Dr. Jacobson again, Jacobson. Larry Warren said that Bastenza was reluctant to go public, which is true. Adrian Bastenza, who was with me, the staff sergeant, was looking to get out of the service, and he wanted to get a government job, primarily in the Southwest near home, that would require security clearance, and he wanted nothing to do with the UFOs. So he did not want his name mentioned, he didn't want anything to do with it. So Larry thought he should adopt Adrian Bastenza's story as his. I have an email from Adrian Bastenza. Basically what it says is, when I got back to the dormitory, the first person I ran into, they were in the same dormitory, was Larry Warren. He said, I had to tell somebody, so I told Larry my story. So you draw your own conclusions, folks. He's probably going to go crazy when he hears this, but I'm tired of him putting lies out. You need to know the truth. The problem with ufology is there's too much nonsense out there. It needs scientific investigation by competent people and not a whole lot of nonsense. That's my big frustration. That's probably one of the main reasons I'm here tonight. So I've got a lot more stuff, but we're going to run out of time, and I know you all have some questions, and I'll be delighted to answer any reasonable question. So if you can use the mic, or I don't know how we want to do this. Well, I can substantiate everything I've told you tonight, and I'm going to leave copies of everything. Now, some other interesting things I can tell you while he's getting ready is I have all Bud Hopkins material, or most of it. I have all Larry Fawcett's material, all 800 pages of it, including postcards from Larry, and you name it, all the Freedom of Information requests and responses. I have all of it. Larry gave it all to me before he passed on a year or two ago. So I have no doubt about it. You have an issue there. I can't do anything about it. You all can.
Okay, we've had some questions submitted, and I imagine the people who sent them in are in the audience. So we'll deal with these first. We've got time for some questions from the floor too. Is there Eileen Warrow here? No? Okay, so Eileen Warrow, the first question she's asked you, have you ever been regressed?
No, I've never been regressed. This is interesting. My last position before I retired, I had total inspection oversight of the whole Department of Defense, all services, all agencies, NSA, DIA, Transportation, everything. I worked for the DODIG. My boss worked for the Secretary of Defense, who works for the President. Before I did the first program, I was approached by NBC, Unsolved Mysteries, that's an American program you may have heard, to do a program. So I went to the DODIG and said, I've been approached by Unsolved Mysteries, because I used to watch it occasionally, to do a program. He said, what's it about? So I sat down for an hour and a half or 2 hours and went through it all. He says, do it. So I did it. Interesting.
This is an interesting one. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Project Gwen, Ground Wave Emergency Network. In a nuclear war, the concept was that airbursts would be used to take out all conventional communication.
But there was a project being run at the time in a lot of American bases, which some people have thought, you know, like Halt, might have a psychological effect on. So the question is, was Project Gwen being run at Bent Waters at the time?
Not to my knowledge, ever. No. A couple things I failed to mention, I just happen to think of. I have statements here too. The air traffic controllers at Bentwaters have come forward. Robert Hastings, who wrote the book UFOs and Nukes, managed to get them to talk, and I have signed sworn statements from them. They watched, the night I was in the forest, they watched the UFO go across their 60-mile scope on the Bright 2, we called it, in 2 seconds, across a 60-mile scope. You figure out the speed. It came back across the scope in about 2 seconds. It buzzed the tire, the air traffic control tire, and sat near the water tower, this big rectangular water tower, not too far from the air traffic control tower, and then went into the forest where we were. The on-duty cop in the tire in the weapons storage area, we had a 40-foot tire out there with the controlled sensors on the fences and things, saw it too, saw it go into the forest. There was a communications man out there working, and he went ballistic. He saw it. I have his statement. The people on the ground in the weapons storage area saw it. 2 of them managed to get a pair of 12-pound binoculars, and they claimed that the white objects we saw were triangular. I have their statements. In other words, 2 air traffic controllers saw it in the tower. Watersham picked it up. The tower in the WSA saw it. People on the ground in the WSA saw it. We saw it. So all these different locations saw it. So it's pretty well established that something did happen. What's your next question?
The next one, you kind of answered. Are there any plans for everyone involved, by which I take it as Warren means Larry and Jim and John and yourself? Any plans for you to get together around the table to try and sort out the discrepancy?
Why do I need to get together with someone that's a fraud? I mean he's threatened to sue me. He sent me a letter and said, you know, I'm going to sue you if you don't keep it up. Sue me. Let's go to court. Let's take a deposition from a whole bunch of people, I can tell you, including his 2 ex-wives, and see what happens.
This one's James DeGitz is in here. I don't think it's his real name, because that's a hero of a book by Harry Harrison, isn't it?
Harry Harris, my old buddy.
Anyway, I would like to know, James there, about the tunnels the manhole covers in the forest.
I have no knowledge of anything in the forest other than what happened to me, and I've been out there half a dozen times. We have, as I said earlier, we have no known. Now, there were some interesting things done in the base during World War II as far as airfield lighting with fuel. The munitions were supposed to be buried under the runway over there, so if it's necessary if there were an invasion to destroy the airfield, but I don't know of any underground facilities whatsoever, other than a sub-basement in the intelligence building, and there may have been something else like that. But if we had a large underground facility like that, there have been several things. You needed pumps to keep the water out, it's almost below sea level. You needed ventilation. There's a lot of things you needed. And we would have known that. We paid the darn electric bills and the water bills.
Dave Boardman. Yeah, Dave Boardman. Got a couple of interesting questions. The decision to award John Burroughs a disability pension as a result of possible exposure to UAP radiation in the forest, as cited in Project Condign, should represent a dramatic turning point in the case. However, rather predictably, the matter has received little media attention. What are your views, Colonel, on the significance of this?
I have doubts that John Burroughs' physical problems have any relation to what happened in the forest. However, that being said, there are some issues. John Burroughs and Jim Penniston, as well as Larry Warren, cannot get their medical records. And I'll tell you a very good story. In 1990, I did an organizational inspection of NSA along with other people. That's the National Security Agency. The day or two before, Larry Warren called me. We were sort of on speaking terms then. I've just given up talking to him. And he said, I'm going to the Washington Post. I'm going to blast them. They're holding my medical records, and I have good reason to believe they were. He tried every which way to get them. He had several influential senators and former attorney general and everybody else trying to get them, and it came down to the personnel center at Randolph and the people at St. Louis, the military records center, all said they NSA had them. So, knowing that he's going to go make a big noise to the world about the NSA, and we're doing an inspection, I said to Colonel Bill Shea, who was my inspector heading up the team, I said, you tell your counterpart when you get out there that Larry Warren's about to make a lot of noise and maybe embarrass them. So they prepared for it. Fair enough. So Bill Shea goes out and tells his counterpart, this is 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. By 10 o'clock, I got a call from the chief of the compromise branch at NSA. And he introduced himself. I have his name and his phone number. He's probably long since retired, but he said, "What's this about Warren?" So I told him a little bit. And I said, "Well, what do you know?" He said, "Nothing." We talked for a while, and I realized he knew more than I did. Now, back to John Burroughs and Jim Peniston. They've had issues getting treated at the VA. Whether it's related to whatever happened in the forest or not, I don't know. I can't say. I'm not a doctor. But Gordon Wins and I both wrote very detailed, strong letters to the VA, and they relented, and they are treating them. So they are getting treated. Does it relate? I don't know.
Another question here, which is good speculation. It's been announced there are further MOD files being processed for release at the moment. Despite assurances all the MOD files on the matter had previously been placed in the public domain, do you have any views on the possible content of these files and their potential value?
None whatsoever, but I can tell you something interesting, because my buddy Nick Pope did a lot of research on this, and documents are missing from the exact time frame that we had the issues of Pentwaters. Everything before and after that's still there. He did a lot of research. Most of you know who Nick Pope is. So, something funny. I'd love for everything to come out. I have no idea what, other than my memo, I have no idea what they have. I don't think they ever responded. They got caught flat-footed and have egg on their face. That's the only thing I can say. They never expected it to come out either, I'm sure. Well, their people did it, so.
Are there any couple of questions from the floor still, John? Yeah?
I was just going to mention something. Because in volume 8, Haunted Skies, which Colonel Mark assisted me with, which I thank you for.
You want the mic?
No, they can hear me. And friends of Dot Street, both those ladies here tonight. The officers that went to the forest was P.C. Martin Brophy and P.C. David King.
I knew them both.
You know them both, yeah. But P.C. Martin Brophy was to tell of an interesting sighting in January 1981 when he was on duty at the police station. And a guy came to the police station door and was actually a terrified motorcyclist. And I can say that tonight was actually, as a result of the gentleman over there, we know who that motorcyclist is. And I think, Kim, could you come and announce please? Go on, you'll be all right. You see, I mean, it really takes guts to stand in front of the orders and say, tell you about a site. Kim's brother Nata, and there's no doubt he's the same guy. Unfortunately, I haven't got any volume 8 left, so I started sending it. So I don't think the volume 8 and show it. But before he speaks, we'll also say that the police inspector that wrote to Georgina Bruni, which was mine, and I have some photos of her in the forest in Sage. She passed away some years ago.
Sorry, can you speak up a bit? They didn't hear you.
Sorry.
Can't hear you.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to say that the police inspector that wrote to Georgina Bruni, he actually had quite a very interesting sighting around the Leiston area while he was driving home one night. So, you know, it happens all the time. As I say, Kim's sighting is an interest because back in 1996, I had a sighting myself in 1996 in June of that year, when I can imagine I was at a local pub and only having a pint, and you've got a perfect clear night sky, you've got a few satellites wandering over, aircraft going in, and then these two, if you can imagine, two objects the size of a dustbin and it's bolted together, moved through the celestial arc and were gone. I didn't even record it. What was the point of recording it then? But that was tremendous, and I've no idea what it is, and it certainly may have similarities with what Kim saw. That you saw when you were on the way home. So,
yeah.
They're all bike, yeah?
No, I don't know whether you better hear me, but I was riding a motorbike through Ipswich late in 1981, and I'm an engineer. I do steel work and stuff like that. I was working in Leicester, and I come home to see my girlfriend in Channel 1. And I was riding through Woodbridge Road in Ipswich, and I was looking ahead of me, and I looked up in the sky and I saw two huge white lights. Nothing more, but two huge white lights. And it just occurred to me, it just didn't look quite right. I thought, I wonder if they must be building something, there must be a structure there. And I pulled up near the mini roundabout, near Barney Fang. And I remember, I stood there, I took the crash helmet off, I thought, I wonder what that is. And I looked up and these two huge lights were static in the air. I can't give you any idea of dimensions, sizes, but they were huge. Side by side, just literally in the air, like car headlights. And then they started to move. And it was when they moved, it just made my hair stand on end, because I thought there was no sound, it was completely silent, and I had this feeling, and as my wife says, you can't tell because you couldn't see it, pitch black. The light they were there, gone. I got on the motorbike, and I don't think Valentino Rossi would have kept up with me going through the Hesgrave. I ain't going to tell you how fast I was going, but it was quick. I went straight to Woodbridge Police Station. I was hammering on the door, manic, and the copper put his head out of the window. He said, "What the hell do you want at this time of night?" I said, "I've got to tell you something. I've seen something really strange." I said, "And I know you probably think I'm mad." I said, "I've got to tell you." I said, "Because it concerns me." And then all of a sudden, another cop pushed past him and he said, "What did you see?" And I mean, I can't tell you if what the other man saw was true or not. I don't know, but I can tell you what I saw. The other cop said, "What did you see?" He said, "I've been parked up somewhere out in the countryside." I think he said Grunsborough or Haskett. He said, "I've just seen some really strange things." He said, "I see a load of lights going across the fields and everything," and it made me feel better because I thought, actually, I'm not insane, and actually there was something strange in the air that night. Then the other cop came back and said, "I'm going to sort this out once and for all." He didn't believe his mate. Like anybody that's never seen anything, you're cynical, you don't believe, you just don't know what it is. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't something I've seen before. And I've worked on the American air bases from when I was 19 as a chef, for Costains building the concrete bunkers for the A-10s when they came, and the F-4s went out. And I work up there now, I've got Mount Work business up there, been up there 15 years. I've lived in this area and I've never seen anything like it again since. Another guy run RF Washington, the some low-flying scent that you can complain about noise or whatever. And he came back and he said, "There's nothing in the skies tonight, so I don't know what."
Let me leave you with a couple of things to think about. You know the diameter of the Earth, rather the circumference of the Earth, is just about 26,000 miles. The Earth rotates every 24 hours, doesn't it? Which means if you're on the equator, you're traveling over 1,000 miles an hour. Now here in England, you're probably only doing 800 miles an hour. Do you have any effect? No, because the atmosphere and everything is moving with you. There may be some way that these, whatever they are, have found a way to integrate themselves with their craft. Because I've pulled 7 Gs, and let me tell you something, even with a G suit on, your vision goes down to next to nothing, and if you're lucky, you stay, you can understand what's going on, you don't pass out, it's just something else. There's certainly a possibility of that. Something else that struck me after reading the book and talking to some very knowledgeable people. Everybody in the world, different places, talks about Yeti, Bigfoot, the abominable snowman. Has anybody ever found one physically, or bones, or any positive evidence other than footprints? There have been a lot of cases where UFOs have been in the area. Now, I'm not saying Bigfoot or reptilian animals or funny dogs or elves or whatever come from UFOs, but there's some strange connection in some way with some of that. Who knows? One other thing I was going to tell you. Actually, I got part of that from Carl Fenty. If you ever want to read a good book, it's UFOs in Water. That's a subject that's never been touched by anybody prior to Carl getting involved. But I guess the best thing I can say is there's no doubt in my mind that we are not alone. That's all I can say. I don't know what I saw. I wish I knew. I'll probably never know, and you may never know either. So, yes, I think there are some people that know, but you won't get to them. Mr. Obama won't get to them. The Other presidents have tried hard. Jimmy Carter supposedly had an experience. Bill Clinton tasked his chief of staff, told him when he came into office, there's two things I want to know. Told Warren Hubble, the gentleman got in a little trouble later, but he apparently did a good job at the beginning. He said, I want to know who killed Kennedy, and I want to know if UFOs are real. And when he left office, he said, I never got an answer to either one of them. So I leave you with that.
Well, I've just got home. It's been quite a weekend, I can tell you. Oh, there's so many people I want to thank. Of course, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt for coming all the way over from the United States and speaking to us, and for giving us the tour of his experience in 1980. That was very interesting, and for addressing people at the event. John Hanson, whose work has been absolutely phenomenal in this. And I can't even begin to tell you what he's been through to put this event together. In fact, there's things I can't tell you, basically. But that guy has really sweated blood for this, and I hope he's going to have a well-deserved rest now, after all the turmoil and strife he's been through. Now, my good friend Derek Savory, I could not have done this without him. I really couldn't. He's been fantastic. I've been staying at his place and everything else. He's been a fantastic host. And all the other guys who turned up, people who came from Yorkshire, people who came from Warminster, it was great to see them again, and thanks to them for turning up. And thanks for Brenda for showing us around the forest herself, and for helping out with everything. And for, of course, all the research she's done, as you heard when you listened to her lecture, Brenda Butler. She's one of the most important researchers in this event, of course. And of course Larry Warren, Peter Robbins, good friends of mine who have really inspired me in what I do. And anyone else, Joe, the guy who did all the tech stuff, he was brilliant. Oh, and it's been really quite an experience. And as I said at the beginning, this is a unique experience. A unique event. The chances are that Colonel Halt will not be coming back to the UK to do another of these events. He's 75 years old. I mean, you can see he's pretty fit for a man of his age. He kept himself in shape when he retired, obviously. He's got a family now. In fact, I met his son. His son came over with him. A young lad called Clifford, who's never been to Rendlesham Forest before. And I said to him, Clifford, there's a lot of family history here, you know. He nodded, he understood. As I said, this has been a wonderful event. It's also been somewhat tainted, I think, by the controversy surrounding this, which unfortunately is very much generated by Colonel Halt himself. And to his discredit, he said some things which I consider unbecoming, and I think that has put a bit of a dampener on things. I don't think it's ruined everything, and I do believe that Colonel Halt has the right to have his say in his conflict with Larry Warren and Peter Robbins, and his dislike of what they've written about the Rendlesham Forest incident. He does have the right to have that say, but I think he dwelled on it far too much over the course of the day, and I think he was far too severe in my view, having looked at both sides of this story. I do urge viewers to please look into both sides of the story by all means. I'm not saying you should believe what Larry and Peter say. Just read their book, Left at Eastgate, and then read the other books which say something different. I've done that, and I do think that Larry and Peter have a story which is worth hearing, and I think it should be taken more seriously than Colonel Halt and many other people are willing to take it. And that, I think, is saddening. That saddens me. But as I said, that put a bit of a, that's sort of, I think that sort of maybe reduced the spirit a little bit, but not completely. And I think I myself and everyone else really still enjoyed what happened this weekend, and it was really great to talk to Colonel Holt. He's a really interesting guy. He's a great guy to talk to. His trek through the forest was really quite something. It really was quite amazing to see the locations where all this happened all those years ago. 35 years down the line, and well, it's still officially, I think it's still officially a lighthouse or a truckload of burning manure flying through the sky, being driven by a parachute test dummy, no doubt. The question is, what's going to happen now? Are we going to get any closer to the truth of the Rendlesham Forest incident? Are we going to come back here in 35 years and have another conference still asking what the hell happened and still trying to dismiss the nonsense that the sceptics have said about this? The fact that Halt and his men saw a lighthouse. Or it was a burning manure, or was it? What's my favourite? Oh yeah, the joyriding ice cream van. Yeah, someone suggested that a bunch of what happened was a bunch of thugs broke into somebody's house, and it was an ice cream man, a local ice cream man. This was the winter, so he wasn't working; he was away on holiday, and they stole his van, and they put the jingles and the lights on, and they drove it round and round on Capel Green, making a lot of noise and a lot of bright lights in the sky, and as a result, 20 highly trained airmen, security police, thought it was something from another world. I mean, goodness me. So, I mean, this is an ongoing problem, I think, with UFOs and ufology in general, is that I feel this is something that's sort of come up in the last couple of months, I suppose, more than ever. I feel the subject is stagnating. I feel that we're making less and less progress, and that frustrates me. It really does. I mean, we often end up rehashing old cases. I mean, I know the skeptics do this a lot, and the Fortean skeptics like Bufora do this a lot. They go over and over all the old cases, but we go over all the old cases as well. But the cases we go over are mysteries, are still unsolved. Yeah, you know, there's a limited amount of time that we can keep talking about Bob Lazar, and we can keep talking about Roswell, and these things have been done to death. And in a way, I think the Rendlesham Forest incident is heading that way too, and there needs to be a breakthrough. We have to have a breakthrough on this, because I mean, I'm not going to give up, I promise you that, but it's going to, just new people who are new and just getting involved may be disheartened by this lack of progress. So let's just keep pushing on and just hope we have a breakthrough on this. Just hope we get something coming out soon which allows us to break through this impasse and move forward. It may be the disclosure project of Stephen Greer, it may Dr. Stephen Greer, it may be Steve Bassett and what he's doing in Washington right now with the Congressional Hearing Initiative. I wish him luck on that. As you know, I've said many times, I'm dubious about the feasibility of willing disclosure, and I actually explained that in the video when I was talking to John in the video a little while ago. For the reasons I state there, I sometimes do wonder if that kind of disclosure is at all possible. I think the secrecy surrounding UFOs exists. I think it is an immovable object, and I'd like to think that the truth is an irresistible force. So one day we will find out what happens when an irresistible force meets an immovable object. But at the moment I can't help feeling we're a long way from that. Maybe I'll feel differently later on. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this this reportage, this documentary on Colonel Halt back in Rendlesham Forest, July the 20th, 2015. If you could make it, I'm glad you made it. If you can't make it, I hope this film gives you something of an impression of what it was like. Hospital porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order.